I'm ready to go when you are, Peter. All right, perfect. Evening, everyone. It is 6:02 p.m. and I'm going to call the Westfield Flood Control Commission to order. Roll call: Jack Leary.
Present.
Al Jageer, present. Steve Malacleb.
Here.
Casey Berube.
Here.
And Mark Crosati, not present. I don't know if he will be attending the meeting.
I spoke to him earlier today. He will not be able to attend.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Casey. Public report participation. We do have one member of the public in the audience. Ed, would you like to say anything? Ed's microphone's muted. Ed, are you there?
I have no sound.
There you are. Okay, can everyone hear me good?
Yes.
Okay, sometimes my headset causes problems.
No, hearing you fine.
Okay. All right, well, hopefully Ed can hear us. Let's see. Moving on from public report participation, seeing none, I can't call for a vote as we do not have a quorum. So we'll just move through this. I have no report from the city engineer, Mark Rosati, unless Casey has something to offer on Mark's behalf. Item 5, report from Department of Public Works, Casey Berube. Casey, you have the floor.
Not much new to report. I'm still mainly focused on our snow and ice control. But I did talk to Joe Kittner, our stormwater coordinator, earlier this week, and so we were able to do the inspection on the discharge pipe from the Williams Riding Way Flood Control Station. Nothing majorly structural observed.
Good.
You know, any deficiencies, but there was some groundwater infiltration. I haven't actually seen the report or reviewed the video yet, but the inspection was done from the outfall at the river up to the back towards the station itself.
Okay. Was it serious groundwater infiltration, or was it just minor?
I don't know. He said there was a fair amount of groundwater infiltration, so I haven't seen it. So ultimately, it's not really the worst thing in the world. The water's trying to get to the river.
No,
I don't think it would really affect capacity. And you know, the good news being there's nothing majorly structural off is what I'd kind of gotten. And granted, it was kind of just a brief conversation I'd had. I haven't actually seen the report or reviewed the footage. So,
right. Welcome back, Ed. Well, hopefully it's just the joints, and you know, it'll get sorted out. Good times. Thank you, Casey. Do you have anything else?
No, not at current. No.
All right. Thank you, Casey. Item 6, report from Westfield Emergency Management. Steve, you have the floor.
Well, nothing much for us. It seems Mother Nature has passed us over for all these big storms that everybody else has gotten, left us alone, which makes Casey happy, I'm sure, in the DPW. I'm sure you've already received the reports from MEMA and FEMA. They're already talking about spring thaw and flooding. I don't know where they're coming up with that, considering next week we'll be back into single digits, but sooner or later it will happen. And we haven't had anything else really major go on. So we'll just keep plugging away and watch out what does happen when we go into spring thaw. I don't think it's going to be a major issue this year. We haven't had a lot of snow. Our rainwater has come and gone. We all saw the ice dams break up in the Westfield River.
Yep.
Didn't cause any issues there. So.
Yep.
So I don't see anything major going on. Hopefully it stays that way.
Hopefully it does. I mean, you saw the email I sent out from Army Corps. They had a concern about the ice damming on the river, and only because the volume of water that was melting into the system, and then the temperatures on top of that. But we seem to have missed out on all that, thankfully.
Well, we got some warm days, and then of course it broke up. A lot of it ended up as the river receded, it stayed up on the shoreline, and as the ice chunks broke with the warm weather, they went downstream. So,
Yep,
didn't cause us any major issues.
No, I know up on the West River, up in Brattleboro area, they had their annual ice jam.
Yes,
But,
yes.
seemed to have not been terrible, but we all kind of seem to have missed or dodged that bullet. But like you said, we're going back into the cold temps, and it seems this pattern of thawing and then cold snap behind it. I think this pattern is going to go on for a few more weeks. So we might see it again, but hopefully this is kind of the end of it, and hopefully that we get the snow that we get doesn't amount to too much over the next couple weeks.
Well, they're calling for 6 for us, which probably means 2. It's all been going east, which is okay.
Yeah.
If we do have 5 continuous days of single temps or even low dual temps, I mean, we could see icing again. But again, I don't think it's going to cause an issue on the river. It's been doing okay, so I don't think we'll have any problems here.
Yep. I think their bigger concern is with the MEMA and FEMA thing is out east got a lot more snow than us, and then points north of us got a lot more snow. I think from what I've seen going upstream, there isn't really, like you said, there isn't a lot of snow in the Westfield River watershed, although on the northern ends of it, I haven't been up there, up past the Chesterfield Gorge and up that way. So, but, Army Corps is on top of it. So hopefully those upper branches will not be an issue, and we'll move through the spring flood season with minimal impacts.
Well, even when Boston got 2 feet, Pittsfield and Lenox and all up through there, they only got 6 to 8. So they didn't get the heavy snowfall that way.
No, but they did get it in a prior storm. So
yeah, they've had a couple were bigger than us. So yeah, I mean, when we go into thaw, we're gonna have water come downstream. There's no question.
Right. All right. Anything else, Steve?
Not as far as that. I mean, I was going to ask if we heard anything more from our new mayor for you and I about an office. We had talked to Bob, 6 months ago, and still kind of waiting to hear about that.
Yeah,
Is anything new to you?
No, I have nothing. I do and I don't. So as far as an office goes for flood control, there may be an office in the future, but I'll get to that as we get into the rest of the agenda.
Okay.
As far as emergency management, I really didn't get too far into that conversation. We were focused on the future of this one. All right, old business. Powder Mill Brook and Armbrook Dam Rehabilitation Project update. So I don't have any updates as of now. I was trying to arrange a meeting with Jim Lyons and the mayor to kind of put everything back into some perspective, as during the COVID debacle, during Mayor Hummerson's tenure, it seemed to have kind of everything had been pushed off. I know Jim Lyons has concerns about where the city of Westfield sits with the Armbrook and Powder Mill Brook dams. So I was trying to arrange a meeting, but as of yet, we haven't gotten that far. There's been a lot of back and forth between Jim and I, but we haven't actually been able to get a date that works. And I know he's pretty busy right now with some other matters. So that's all I have on Armbrook and Powder Mill. Moving on to item 8, Williams Riding Way Flood Control Pump Station. Casey gave us a little bit of an update, and the other is the Tide Flex backflow prevention valve. Casey, do you know anything more on that?
No, we haven't had any further discussion on that matter.
Okay, thank you. I know it was Mark Crusati had started working on getting an analysis done, and I haven't heard back on it. Moving on to item 9, proposals for repair of Little River Levee drainage culverts. So we did receive two proposals. Hang on just one second. I have to grab one of them. I was looking at it a little while before the meeting. Bear with me one second, folks. Okay, so we had two proposals, one from Woodard and Curran and one from Ty and Bond. Reading through these, I will kind of breeze through them. Ty and Bond had the scope of services, topographic survey, design, sedimentation and erosion water controls, drawings and specifications, Section 408 of the U.S. Army Corps of Engineer coordination requirement, cleaning and TV inspection of the culverts, which is an additional task for an additional fee. Task 2 is permitting assistance. I'll just read through this. The project area is located within a jurisdictional wetland resource areas, e.g., example given, inland bank, land underwater, bordering land subject to flooding, riverfront area, which are regulated by the City of Westfield Wetlands Protection Ordinance, Ordinance number 1109, and the Massachusetts Wetlands Protection Act, Mass General Law, Chapter 131, subsection 40, both of which are administered by the City of Westfield Conservation Commission. Vegetated wetlands and streams are also regulated as wetlands and waters of the United States, Section 401 and 404 of the Federal Clean Water Act as administered by the Mass DEP and the United States Army Corps of Engineers, respectively. Further, the Little River is subject to jurisdiction under the Massachusetts Public Waterfront Act, Chapter 91. Historically, the project site and surrounding area were not mapped as priority habitats of rare species and estimated habitats of rare wildlife by the Massachusetts National Heritage and Endangered Species Program. However, the mapping was most recently updated on August 1st, 2021, and the project site and surrounding area are now mapped as priority habitats of rare species and estimated habitats of rare wildlife by the NHESP, which is the National Heritage and Endangered Species Program. Although if there's any wildlife living there that's endangered, it'd be awfully interesting given some of the stuff that's there and part of the Levees area. Notice of intent, Ty and Bond will prepare a notice of intent for review under Ordinance 1109 and the Massachusetts, hold on, I got to read what the acronym is for, Massachusetts Wetlands Protection Act. The notice of intent will present the proposed activities as well as proposed mitigation if determined to be necessary. To prepare a notice of intent, Ty and Bond will perform the following tasks: prepare permit application forms, develop a project narrative, including construction sequence, prepare resource maps, USGS, floodplain, rare species, etc. Include site photographs, attach project drawings, depict the proposed activities, attach stormwater report and checklist that addresses compliance with the Massachusetts Stormwater Management Standards, submit notice of intent to the Westfield Conservation Commission, Mass DEP, NHESP, and undertake required abutter notification and legal notice. We've assumed that our attendance will be required at up to one site visit with commissioners and 2 public hearings to discuss the application. Upon issuance of order conditions for the project, Ty and Bond will record the document at the Hampden County Registry of Deeds and submit proof of the recording to the commission for their files. Task 2, 91 Chapter request for determination of applicability. Massachusetts Task 2, 3. Massachusetts General Permit Self-Verification, Certificate of Compliance, Permitting Assumptions. There's quite a bit more to this. One of the tasks, some of the tasks that we had asked for were the following: Operation and Maintenance Manual and Emergency Action Plan. In response to the flood of August 1955, the Army Corps constructed an earthen dike, and I won't go into the details of Little River Levee. We understand that the Army Corps of Engineers identified the lack of an O&M manual as a deficiency in their August 1st, 2019 routine inspection report for the levee. Reportedly, there are no records of an O&M being prepared for the levee during its original construction. Now, this holds true for more than just the 2019. This is also for the 2020, 2021, and prior ones to that, 2019. Task 3.1. Operations and Maintenance Manual. Ty and Bond will prepare an Operation Maintenance Manual for routine maintenance and operation of the levee, including regular inspection, self-monitoring procedures. The manual will also include recommended repair procedures for various potential deficiencies that may develop. The manual will be based on practices recommended by the Army Corps and the Federal Emergency Management Agency, FEMA. Typically, the O&M manual would include drawings of the flood control structure. However, we understand that Record drawings or construction drawings do not exist for the Little River Levee. Only a section sketch is available in the October 27th, 1983 U.S. Army Corps of Engineer Rehabilitation Letter Report. We intend to use GIS mapping to depict the location of the levee and to identify their features. Topographic survey of the levee is not included in the scope of services outside the limits discussed under Task 1.1. Task 3, Army Corps Coordination. Time Bond anticipates the need for coordination with the Army Corps. We will submit a draft of the O&M manual to the Army Corps and respond to U.S. Army Corps engineer comments. We anticipate the need for approximately 16 man-hours to respond to comments. Deliverables, we will submit a draft of the O&M to the city in PDF format for review and comment. We will incorporate one round of comments from the city. Upon addressing the city's comments, we will submit a draft of the manual to Army Corps to respond to comments. Final deliverables will include a hard copy and an electronic copy for the Army Corps' use and 2 hard copies and an electronic copy for the city's use. Task 3.4, Emergency Action Plan Update, additional task. The 2021 Army Corps Inspection Report notes that they were provided with a copy of an EAP that was last updated in 2016. The Flood Control Commission's September 2021 Little River Levee report also notes the scope of work includes updates to the EAP. For this proposal, we contacted Kevin DeRocco of the Army Corps to obtain a copy of the EAP and to discuss requirements for updates to the plan. Kevin provided the document referenced in their inspection, which was actually the city's hazard mitigation plan, not specific to Little River Levee. Kevin also noted the EAP is not a mandated requirement for the levee and therefore not required to fulfill the maintenance requirements of the levee. Therefore, we included this effort as an additional fee option to minimize the base fee while still providing services to meet the overall intent of the project. Army Corps guidance suggests Army Corps guidance suggests an EAP should include information on the notification, emergency detection, response, incident management, and preparedness. I will add a caveat to this. So it is not required by Army Corps as of yet, but it will be required in the coming levee safety program from Army Corps and FEMA. And again, just as part of our long-term plan has been, the EAP is kind of integral to what Steve does. And for the city purposes, if there should be a failure or issue at the levee, city officials know how to deal with the situation before the federal agencies come and try to assist. Because it gives you an idea of how to deal with each particular incident that may occur. And how to mitigate, the issues before they propagate into a levee failure. Fee. Here's where the meat and potatoes of this is. Time Bond will perform the scope of work noted above for a not to exceed fee of $64,000. We will undertake this work on an hourly plus expense basis. In the event that the scope of work is increased for any reason, the limiting fee to complete the work shall be mutually revised by a written amendment. The terms and conditions of Time Bond's on-call contract number 10273 with the City of Westville as part of this letter agreement. I'll skip through some of this. Project breakout. Estimated fee, task 1, design, $41,500. Task 2, permitting assistance, $12,800. Task 3, O&M manual, $9,700 for a total of $64,000. Who do we lose? Not sure who we lost. Jack, you're still there?
Yeah, I'm still here. I'm listening to you.
Okay.
Yeah, you got me. I jumped on the phone.
Gotcha. Okay, Ed. As noted above, our estimated fee does not include costs for items either not included in the proposed scope of services or services that may not be required to complete the intended project. Below is a summary of the estimated fees for the additional tasks. Estimated fee. Task 1.6, cleaning and TV inspection of the drainage conduits, $9,400. Task 2.4, certificate of compliance, $2,800. Task 3.4, emergency action plan update, $6,200 for a total of $18,400. Schedule, we are prepared to initiate services described hereon upon your written receipt, authorization to proceed, assuming you receive an executed agreement by March 1st, 2022. Propose the following schedule. April 1st for the topographic survey, 90% design submittal to the city by June 1st. I don't think we're going to make that March 1st deadline, only because we're dealing with a handful of situations. And time bond is one of the two. The second one from Woodard and Curran is, let me read through this. Thank you for providing Wood and Curran with the opportunity to continue support the City of Westfield's engineering needs related to their storm drain and flood protection infrastructure. The scope of services details our proposed approach for the rehabilitation of a section of the Little River Levee and accompanying culvert repairs. The objective of the project and our proposed services is to evaluate the existing conditions of the levee and associated culverts and subsequently prepare a remedial design to address deficiencies within the 550-foot long segment that is routinely inspected by the Army Corps of Engineers and further described below. Our work will include the preparation of design drawings and technical specifications, permitting and preparation of an operations and maintenance plan, and an emergency action plan for this segment of levee. I'm going to read through. This gives a little bit of history again. I'm going to skip that. Our understanding is that the project is based on information provided to the City of Westfield and request for proposal prepared by the Westfield Flood Control Commission, dated December 9th, 2021. It is understood that the Army Corps routinely inspects the 550-foot long section of the levee that was repaired in 83. The entire 2,500-foot long levee embankment is required to prevent flooding of the protected area and is referred to as a flood damage reduction system. Failure of any part of the 2,500-foot long FDR system will result in flooding of the protected area, resulting in economic damages and potential loss of life. We understand that the city and the commission wish to complete rehabilitation of the entire 550-foot long section to restore eligibility under the Army Corps Rehabilitation Program and eventually rehabilitate the 2,500-foot long embankment to certify the FDR system so it meets the Federal Emergency Management Agency FEMA criteria at 44 CFR 65.10, mapping of areas protected by levee systems. At this stage of the project, however, the Commission is requesting proposals from pre-qualified consultants to evaluate the levee segment in the area of the twin corrugated metal pipe CMPs. The project involves evaluating and designing the following for the subject segment of the levee: lining or replacing the existing culverts, reuse or replacement of the backflow preventers, head walls and trash racks at the upstream canal side and downstream side riverside ends of the culverts, improvement of the levee 50 feet upstream and downstream of the culverts, preparation of federal, state, and local permits, and development of an operations and maintenance plan and an emergency action plan for the 550-foot levee segment. Project approach and scope of services. Word and Curran's project team includes, I'll skip through that. Repair and rehabilitation of older levees and flood control protection systems generally requires significant data collection due to a lack of historical records. Repairs for even a small portion of the levee or drainage feature that penetrates the levee. Let me reread that. Repairs for even a small portion of the levee or a drainage feature that penetrates the levee therefore often require subsurface investigations and hydrologic and hydraulic analyses. Based on our understanding of the short-term project goals outlined in the RFP and the Commission's long-term goals, our team's approach for the project considered the following key elements that will enhance the project and may be required to meet Army Corps of Engineers standards now or in the future. Culvert rehabilitation versus replacement. It appears that the rehabilitation of the culverts warrants further evaluation since it will help in the overall construction cost. The level of effort for engineering, permitting, and a portion of construction costs, however, is somewhat fixed, and these costs, with the full life cost of the culvert replacement, should be evaluated for the Commission to select the most cost-beneficial approach for the project. For example, replacement of the culverts may be a relatively small increase in cost as a percentage of the full life cycle cost of the minimum 50-year design life versus a repair that may have a less than 20-year life design. Culvert hydrologic and hydraulic analyses. Based on the inquiries with the city and Army Corps staff, there is no available information to support the capacity of the existing twin culverts for existing storm flows. Understanding the capacity of the culverts is a critical consideration for rehabilitation or replacement, especially if they need to be increased in size based on current watershed characteristics or future precipitation trends. Our team is proposing a hydrologic and hydraulic analysis for the culverts to support the alternative analysis for culvert rehabilitation versus replacement. Additionally, this analysis will support the city's efforts to meet FEMA criteria for interior drainage analysis at 44 CFR 6510 B, in parentheses B and 6. Let's see, Little River updated hydrologic and hydraulic analyses and optional cross-section survey. A hydraulic and hydrologic and hydraulic model is available for the Little River to support the design of the levee embankment. Our team will review the existing model and incorporate it into the design effort for the levee embankment protection, sizing of riprap armoring, and design of a head wall structure for the culvert stability and to minimize debris accumulation. We anticipate that this effort will be required by Army Corps to demonstrate appropriate bank protection based on modeled water surface elevations, velocities, and bank shear stress forces. It is possible that additional river cross-sections may be needed to support the updated H&H model for Little River. Additional survey for cross-river sections, therefore, has been included as an optional scope item if it is needed. Subsurface investigation, optional. Based on inquiries with the city and Army Corps staff, it appears that there is no subsurface investigation data in the vicinity of the culverts to support the design effort. These investigations will most likely be needed to support culvert replacement and installation of head walls at the upstream and downstream ends of the culverts. Subsurface investigation is proposed as an optional task in the event that it is not needed, but also the city should consider including this effort regardless of the project approach to support future geotechnical engineering requirements for seepage, stability, and settlement analysis to meet FEMA criteria 44 CFR 6510. Subsections B, 4, and 5 for this levee segment. Operations and Maintenance Plan, O&M, and Emergency Action Plans, EAPs. The RFP includes development of an O&M and an EAP for the 550-foot long segment of the levee. The entire levee is about 2,500 feet long and includes unmaintained sections to the east and west of the 550-foot segment. Since the ultimate goal of the commission is to have the entire 2,500-foot long segment levee meet all of the Army Corps standards, become enrolled in Army Corps Levee Safety Program, and obtain FEMA NFIP certification, we are providing an alternative scope to prepare an O&M and EAP for the entire 2,500-foot long levee, if so desired. Woodard and Kern will complete the following tasks following above approach and the requested scope of services outlined in the RFP: data collection, primary design, permitting, final design and specifications, operation and maintenance plan and emergency action plan, meetings and correspondence, opinion of probable cause. The scope of services for the above tasks are discussed in more detail below. I'm just going to read through some of this. Current rehabilitation needs and future goals, pertinent existing data, needs and availability, site-specific requirements, construction access, etc., project schedule, i.e. key milestones, time deliverables, etc., and test boring logistics if required. Task 1, 1B, wetland resource delineation. I won't go through all those details. They're almost identical to what Ty and Bond has. Topographic survey and property survey. Woodard Curran surveyor will complete an existing condition survey to support the design and permitting of the project. The survey will depict features including but not limited to property lines and depicting in a recently completed survey by others, wetland flags, river bathymetric immediately adjacent to their subject culverts, structures, fences, walls, roadways, paths, trees more than 10 inches in diameter, tree lines, delineated wetlands, contours at 1 foot intervals, and boring locations if applicable. Underground utilities will be compiled and plotted for visible surface evidence, and available record drawings provided by utility companies and invert elevations for storm and sanitary structures will be obtained and plotted when accessible. Mapping completed for this project will reference the Massachusetts State Plane Coordinate System NAD 83 and the North America Vertical Datum of 1988. Task 1D, river cross-section survey, optional. That's pretty self-explanatory. Task 1E, subsurface investigation, optional. So I'll read that quickly so people understand what it is. As discussed in the project approach, subsurface investigation may be needed based on the availability of data and the preferred approach for rehabilitation or replacement. If required, the project team will engage a drilling subcontractor to perform a one-day drilling program consisting of 1 to 2 borings at the levee. Test borings will be performed at the crown of the levee in the vicinity of the 12 twin culverts access to the levee will be via the southern end of the levee at Ponders Hollow Road. We assume the city will provide access to the levee by removing barriers and clearing brush. In accordance with Army Corps Regulation ER 1110-1-1807, the project team will prepare a drilling program plan and submit it to the Army Corps Levee Safety Officer for review. Our plan will include a figure showing proposed boring locations, drill rig access, a description of the drilling equipment to be used, drilling company qualifications, drilling methods, borehole backfill procedures, etc. It includes dig safe, and the borings will be fully cased and advanced using drive and rotary wash drilling techniques, etc., etc. No open hole or hollow stem auger drilling will be performed. Test borings will be backfilled with the trimmy placed cement bentonite grout upon completion. No groundwater monitoring wells are included in our scope and budget. 2 samples from the borings will be submitted to a geotechnical laboratory for gradation analysis. Assumptions and clarifications. I won't read through that. Deliverables. I will skip through that. Task 2, preliminary design, hydraulic and hydrologic analyses for the existing twin culverts, hydrologic and hydraulic analyses for Little River, preliminary design drawings and memorandum. Task 3, permitting. Task 4, final design and specifications. Task 5, operation and maintenance plan and emergency action plan. Task 6, meeting and correspondence. Task 7, opinion of probable cost. Let's see, schedule. So they have a little bit more in-depth schedule here. Woodard & Curd is prepared to begin the work within 2 weeks of notice to proceed, and the preliminary schedule for the project is summarized below. The schedule assumes the city provides a notice to proceed by the mid-February 2022, which obviously we were not able to meet. Task 1, mid-April 2022, preliminary design, June 2022, permitting, September 2022, final design of specs, November 2022, O&M and EAP, December 2022, meeting and correspondence, project duration, and opinion of probable cost, June and November of 2022. Budget. We will communicate with the city on our efforts relative to this budget and the work requested will not exceed this budget without written authorization from the city. Work will be invoiced monthly based upon percentage of completed work. Data collection, 20,600. Kickoff meeting, 7,700. I should rephrase that. It's kickoff meeting, site visit, and data review. Wetland delineation, 4,900. Topographic and property survey, 8,000. Preliminary design, 22,500. H&H analysis for culverts, 4,300. H&H analysis for Little River, 4,800. Preliminary design and memorandum, 13,400. Permitting, 21,500. Notice of intent application, 12,000. Army Corps of Engineering pre-construction notification, 9,500. Final design and specifications, 20,600. O&M and EAP, 10,500. O&M and EAP for the 550-foot section, 10,500. Meeting and correspondence, 16,000. Opinion of probable cost, 2,200. Total fee, 113,900. And again, some of those are I'm sorry, let me take that back. Optional tasks, river cross section survey, 3,600. Subsurface investigation, 14,500. O&M and EAP for the entire FDR system, 9,300. Total fee for optional tasks, 27,400. So it's significantly more in the big picture, almost double the cost of what Ty and Bond has. However, it appears that it's a lot more comprehensive and is closer to what we had asked for in the RFP. So that is what we have.
Well, it sounds like they're thinking more long-term than short-term.
Well, that is what we asked for in the RFP. We asked for the short-term repair and then the long-term plan, because the thinking is that if the long-term plan that this commission had was that we fix the culverts to meet what Army Corps wants, anticipating future needs, because there's going to be a lot of changes coming with the levee safety program, and also anticipating the future needs of us complying with the FEMA requirement if we get this thing certified, which again is a long-term goal. But that would reduce the insurance costs for everybody on the protected side of that levee to either zero or minimal. Whereas right now they have no, it's not accredited by FEMA, so it offers no insurance rebate. And the other thing being concerning was the National Levee Safety Program, which just kicked off with FEMA and Army Corps, which is going to be parallel to the National Dam Safety Program that rolled out about 10 years ago, maybe a little bit more. It might have been even more than 10, which requires us to do certain things at high hazard dams. Like we have Armbrook and Powder Mill, which we have to have inspected every other year. We have to have an engineering analysis, and then we also have to report to the Office of Dam Safety, which is part of the DCR. And I imagine, based on what I've seen in the initial rollout, because I was part of the kickoff for municipalities and levee owners, it's all being put together. But I'm sorry, I'm stuttering here. Bear with me 1 second. I just got to drink some water.
Well, I know the city probably doesn't want to spend the money, but if there's no actual data on how the levee's built, I mean, a bore sample in 3 locations would be a great asset to know, what is the future possibility of its existence, or what could damage it. Again, nobody wants to spend the money, but it's one or the other. Either you fix what's broke or you don't, and your costs are much more.
Exactly. So the borings from what Woodard and Kern had spoke of, their concern is that we don't know. So we do know for most of the 550-foot section, Army Corps built it to the newer standards, because the old section was built to a questionable standard. There was records of its construction, but Army Corps has lost them. Whether they disappeared, were thrown away inadvertently, nobody seems to have them. We don't have them at the city level. Army Corps doesn't have them in any of their archives, or if they do, it's in a box somewhere in somebody's dark dungeon at the Pentagon. So, and they've searched extensively and found only stuff from 1983, and then a few references in older materials. But they were not able to find any of the construction records. So the borings are for 2 reasons. One, they want to, you got to see what the actual materials are. You also want to see what the structural depth is of the levee and what kind of materials are underneath it, because you're going to have settling of these things after they're built. If it's, clay and soft materials, this thing might settle out, and they have to anticipate that. At least we should, because you've got to be concerned with seepage. Now, I don't know what Ty and Bond really doesn't go into that in any detail, what their plans are. It doesn't say borings.
Well, again, that's what I'm saying. Sounds like the second company is talking more long term. They're thinking about, okay, you're going to spend this money, but do it right the first time. It's going to cost you more up front, but it'll be less expensive down the road, 10 years, 15, 20 years. And looking at new standards, it sounds like their plans are to have it above what today's standards are, but to meet tomorrow's standards.
Yes and no. So they are looking to, we had asked in our RFP to anticipate coming changes to levee program, because the Army Corps, the current Army Corps system is going to be fundamentally changed by this national program, which involves Army Corps and FEMA. So rather than having this 2-piece system, they're going to be kind of merging it all into one bigger one. So right now we have 2 different standards. We have a certification for NFIP, which is only to the 50-year storm standard, And then there's the flood control aspect, which is Army Corps and FEMA at a different level, which is the 100-year storm and the 500-year storm standards. So from a insurance standpoint, it's to a lesser extent, but these two kind of are at odds with each other in a lot of different ways. So what we asked in the RFP is to anticipate that stuff, as you were saying, Steve, anticipate these changes, but also we're looking to meet existing criteria. And this stuff, when it goes to Army Corps, they have to approve anything that takes place. So if we go in there and repair it with a certain plan and it's not to criteria, there's going to have to be changes. And Army Corps may or may not, as it said in the Woodard and Kern one, Army Corps may ask that be done. So that's why they have it in there, anticipating that cost, which we may not have to do. So that's kind of, if that explains it. And maybe I'm stumbling a little bit, and I apologize.
Well, let me hop in for a little bit here.
Absolutely, Jack. You have the floor.
Excuse me. If I'm looking at them. I read them over and I wrote all over the things. You said one of them cost like double what the tie and bond was. But if you go back to an earlier page, when you look at the estimated fees, design, permitting, and O&M manual, that was the $64,000. When you're looking at the estimated fee in the next paragraph, cleaning, TV inspection, certificate of compliance, and EAP update, that came out to $18,400. So you're not going to be getting out less than $82,400 if you had the 64 and the 18,400. There's one thing. So the difference is not quite, in fact, it's more like 31,000 difference between the two. But the difference in what they're covering in the detailing when they're talking about investigating what is the structure underground for those levees, that's not done by Ty and Bond. That's referenced by the other Woodward. What's the name of the company?
Woodward and Curran. Woodward and Curran.
Woodward and Curran. So the difference is not really double. If you really look at it and go back, because they bounce it all over the place. Then one thing that popped in my mind is I looked at, under the $64,000, the O&M manual alone was $9,700, and the EAP update was $6,200. So you're looking at almost around $15,000 difference. Added together, about $15,000. So there's a difference because the Woodward is much lower because they do both of those in the original plan. There's one thing that you can't say, well, we won't do the $18,400 because there's a cleaning TV inspection. You got to clean the pipes out before you can relight them. So therefore, that's an automatic. You have to do it. Certificate of compliance is required. You're going to have to get that because the other city bodies would object if you don't have that. And the EAP update, as I said, it was $6,200. That's included already in Woodward's. Looking at the plan, it seemed like, and probably it's part of our fault because we dealt with Ty and Bond before, and so they have some expectations of how we think, though they may not be correct. They're looking at relining the levee. They're not even mentioning replacing the levee. They're not even going to look at what is the really condition of the bottom of that pipe when you're going to reline it. How long will it last? And that could be a problem because reading the Woodward, they say that can go about 12 years if you reline it. But it could go more, about 50 years if you do the replacement. So you really got to look at, like I think someone else mentioned already, you got to look at the long term because you're going to be spending it. Now, I know the concept in the city is we're hurting for money, so you're going to do the cheapest way you can to get out and meet the minimum standards. Setting up some future mayor 40 years from now with the same problems we're facing now. So I went nuts reading this document because you're going back and forth and looking at it, and some cover this, some cover that, and you find out really the difference is around probably 30,000 at the most, maybe less. There's part of a couple of things, though, that neither one mentioned. Well, they both mentioned it, but they didn't put a price down on it because they don't know the price. Is the head wall is a certain chapter which both admit we have not met. Now, what is it, chapter 90 or something? I forgot what the number was. You know, Al?
No, it's not
That's
chapter
all.
90, but I don't
No,
remember.
chapter-
Yeah, I don't remember, Jack.
There is a certain chapter, 90.
There is.
I think that has something else in the city, but that's not included because once there's a fee, if we have to, it says we assume that you don't need that permission. Right. But what if we're assuming wrong? What if the head wall, which is kind of an important place, what if the head wall is not included and there's a fee and there's also other requirements on how you construct it? That hasn't been really considered by either one of them because they both don't know what the situation is, neither looked into it. So you got to really look at these documents because if you go back and forth and you go crazy doing it, there is a lot of things that are not in one but are in the other. It seems like Woodward they worked with the city before, but they never worked with the flood control. Seems like they're looking at the long-term plan. Well, Ty and Bond has got how can we get for the next 10 years fixed, and they're probably call it the short-term plan. Like we did borings. Ty and Bond doesn't even consider doing the borings. Well, Woodward, I think it's in their overall cost to look at where the borings would go, at least mark off where they're going to go, and do some overall thought process on what's happening inside that levee itself. If you replace the culverts and the rest of the levee falls apart, like it did in 1983, and a big whitewash of it, I think almost $200,000 to replace in 1983, and the Army Corps did it. No, that has to be considered too. So those are just a few thoughts. We got to look at our budget. There are certain things. I know we had $100,000 for engineering. Now I don't know what's been tapped out of that because we're not getting the communication that we need right now. But how much of that is left? There's some money coming in from federal grants that applied for levees and dams, and how much of that will actually go into the levee? That's another question. What's the mayor's thoughts? Because he's going to have a lot of input into this because we don't have a quorum to vote. Now, I know we can get and made a contract out with them, either one, Ty and Bond or Woodward, and they can start doing stuff. But I have a gut feeling there's a problem of you can do all that, committing and yes, do the study, do this, do that. But when the final analysis comes down to where do you get it to pay it, do we need other signatures or just your signature, Al? I'm a leery about that one. I know I've been told not to worry by some people, but from my experiences and gut feelings, we could get hit. Yeah. I don't want to end up thinking this is what we're going to be spending and then find out when you put the head wall costs in there and when you look at other factors, that it's a lot more than what you think.
Right. Nope.
I don't know if you said anything. I want to comment on it. You want to comment on it or disagree?
Yeah. Well, on the one thing I'll go back to is I'll read what Woodward Kern had in theirs. Lining, as far as what is in the understanding of this, lining or replacement of the existing culverts, reuse or replacement of the backflow preventers, head walls and trash racks at the upstream canal side and downstream riverside ends of the culverts, improvement of the levee 50 feet upstream and downstream of the culverts, preparation of federal, state, local permits, and development of an operations and maintenance plan and emergency action plan for the 550-foot levee segment. Now, that is actually taken right out of our RFP. That is what we asked for in the RFP.
Correct.
So Woodward Kern addresses it. I'm going back to the Ty and Bond, and I'm trying to see if they have that in there. Hold on.
Kind of sounds like Ty and Bond is lowballing it, but then the extra costs are going to be added in later. Once they start, and then, oops, we got to do this, and oops, we got to do that. And, of course, then the costs start going up and up and up.
Right.
That's what my concern is. You throw out a low
That's also my concern also, because I know we have some experiences, and we've had mostly good experience with Ty and Bond, but a couple of things, like when we were down at the 9,000 square feet, they marked that some places were clear when they had trees on them, and they didn't finalize with the 9,000 square feet. Al had to go down there with, who else he went with? and had to actually do all the marking. So some of the work we had to end up doing. I wasn't there, but
You were.
at that time.
You were there, but you
I
weren't
visited
there.
and said hello. I'm an 85-year-old guy. I'm not about to crawl there trying to cut vines and branches that are
Well, we had
bigger than me.
Well, Mark Goodness is with us. Mark Goodness was there with us, helping. Casey came down and helped, and of course Ed Osowski, who's here, was. I mean, I can't thank him enough for the help, and we got the job done. But
Ed Osowski's a well-built, strong individual, and he's a heck of a lot younger than I am. But who isn't? I'm 85, going on 86.
Now,
enough.
all the surveys that were just done there for the acquisition of the properties, does
Yes.
that not weigh in at all?
So, based on what we know of those surveys that we had done, they're surveys, but they're not the most detailed surveys, and definitely not to the level that we probably need for the levy, for engineering and permitting purposes. So we had some interesting difficulty looking at the survey maps that we were provided, with some of the details being.
Well, also, you want to point out, Al, that we haven't purchased. We have in our budget, we have Merrill Council and our board approval to buy 6 parcels.
Right.
But the key one to me is number 4, which they call the ditch. That's where the inflow of the culverts would be. To my knowledge, we haven't paid that person for that yet. It's hanging in the air for some reason.
Right. So
I don't know why.
In conversation, apparently there are 2 parcels unaccounted for. The process was started, and I don't know what the holdups are on those 2 parcels out of the 6. So 4 have been fully acquired by the city. The other 2 are in some form of legal limbo. Although all 6 were authorized to be purchased by the city council and mayor, signed for, and funds appropriated from this commission's budget. So
Can I stop you for a second? You said 4. I was more cognizant that there were at least 3. One of them being Unit 4 or Section 4. Is that now paid for? Because no one told me.
I don't. No. There are 4 total. I don't know which ones. That's information I got in, and I'll get to that in communications. But recent conversation I had an email regarding our budget and outstanding debts in light of budget information and things going on. There are 4 that have been dealt with. There are 2 outstanding.
Okay, that's news to me. I wasn't updated on that.
Yeah, no, this is all within the last couple days, Jack.
Okay.
So I'll read that email and communications. So because there's a lot of things in play right now, and as you know, a lot of things going on with this commission's future. So and we don't have a fully constituted commission anymore. It's just 2 commissioners, and Mark Goodness has resigned, although he's officially still technically able to vote until he's replaced. So
correct.
may or may not have a quorum. Now here's the interesting thing, and I'm just gonna, at roll call wise, Mark Goodness.
Yes.
Mark Goodness is present. So in technical speak, we do have a quorum as of right now. But we do not have in our budget the funds to approve one versus the other. We have funds to probably secure the Time Bond one. We do not have the funds for the Woodard Curran one, if we should choose that one. But we also have, and this was going to be in communications, but it ties into this. There is at least 75,000, if not more, in ARPA funds that were secured by State Senator John Velas and State Representative Kelly Pease for the purposes of levee and dams for the city of Westfield, and that has been signed for and put into the city's general funds. So there is at least 75. I was told that there may be more than that was brought in, but I know there's 75,000 for the purposes of repair or other needs for levees and dams. So there's this money available to us. Obviously, I have to have the mayor and the city council put that into our budget to pay for this levy process, if we so choose the Woodard and Curd one. Now, being that we have a quorum at the moment, I can say this. Looking at these two proposals, what was submitted in our RFP, the Woodard and Kern one is more comprehensive and in line with what we asked for, looking at all of the possibilities and future outcomes for the levee system, anticipating future needs and compliance issues for the greater scope. One other thing that really kind of caught my eye reading these was that Woodard and Kern was willing to look at the options, which is something we asked for. And I'll read that piece. This is from our RFP. Lining or replacement of the existing culverts and reuse or replacement of the backflow preventers. And of course, head walls and trash racks at the upstream canal side and downstream riverside. Now, those three things are kind of the crux of this repair, because you got to, if the culverts are found to not be relineable, or Army Corps decides that they don't like the idea of relining them, we have to go to replacement. So if we're paying just to have them looked at to be relined, that kind of dead ends us if there's a change in perspective, or we find that there's a much more serious issue. I do like the idea, and that's why we put it in there, that you need to look at both options to find out what would be the better option. And we have a fallback plan if again, Army Corps has to approve all this. If Army Corps doesn't like the idea of relining, and Casey was there when we had these conversations with Army Corps in the past, where Army Corps was against the idea, they're a little bit more open to it now. I'd hate to have to go into this and we find out that A, the culverts are far more deteriorated than believed, or B, we could reline them, but Army Corps says no, given the overall situation with our levee, that we haven't been maintaining it, and they don't feel comfortable with the relining process. But also, if it turns out that we have to at some point in the less, as it was stated by Woodard and Curran, that this repair with a lining may not last the full 50 years and have to be taken out. If we go putting in concrete head walls at either end of the culverts, and this thing needs to be relined or rebuilt in the future, I mean, what kind of headache is that? Because now you've literally blocked both ends with concrete structures that may have to be torn out, or at some level chipped out and rebuilt. Those are all viable concerns. And then of course, there's also the seepage concern. Again, this is the purpose of the levee, is to keep water out. And the last thing you want is water seeping around these culverts. It's not like a road culvert where you have to get water under it. This is to keep water out. When it's off, when it's shut off, and there's no water coming through. Otherwise the levee will fail. And that's the reality of it. You don't want water seeping around that pipe structure and penetrating through to the other side, because it will wash out the levee. It's another form of piping, except it's a man-made piping situation because we have a culvert running stormwater out. So, looking at these two, I do like the Woodard and Kern one because it's more comprehensive and in line with what we asked for. I also see the cost analysis, and I know the city has a huge looming budget problem in costs. So even if we do this, the other problems are: is the city going to have the funds or have the interest in having the funds for Little River Levees culvert repair? We do all this, we have numbers, we present it to the city, and the city says, look, we don't have the money, we can't do it. Now, the whole idea of this, and I did say this to the mayor, the whole point of doing this was, we need to get numbers. We don't have numbers, and we've been doing what comes first, chicken or egg, for a while now, because we haven't had all the best support, shall we say, for this repair project. But we've had a chicken or the egg, and we determined that we need to come up with some numbers, and this is how we get there, to justify whatever we need to do. So we can't fix it without numbers, and these give us those numbers if we do this. The rub is we get these numbers and then it sits on a shelf and we end up having to do it again in a few years if that's what the city so chooses. But the looming problem with that is the future of this commission is in question. So there's going to be some gap should the city decide that this commission is no longer feasible, and what happens in the meantime. So do we pursue this? Do we put this on a shelf and leave it to somebody? I mean, we've gone 10 years now working at this and the 2 dams and other projects. And if this gets put on a shelf, when does it get looked at again? I can't answer that. Whereas this commission has, been pretty much on top of it as best we can with the limited resources and support, getting it to where we are now, which, given all the obstacles we've been up against, I think we've accomplished quite a bit, and getting to at least this point. And that's kind of where I sit with this. I like the tie-in bond proposal in that, they look at what we had asked them to look at previously, but and again, they may without having them present, there may be more to this. But what it's seeing in the proposal return, I mean, Woodard and Kearns is very much in line with what we asked for. And no slight to tie and bond. But also looking at the proposals, tie and bonds is 8 pages and Woodard and Kearns is 14 pages long, and has a lot more detail to what they're going to do. And that's, I'm looking at the 2, and I like Woodard and Kearns because it's more in line with what.
Can I ask a question?
Absolutely.
Looking at Woodward and Kearns.
Yep.
Looking at the budget.
Yep.
You have it in front of you?
No, I don't have it right in front of me, but I can
get it.
What's the question? And then I can tell you.
Okay, 5 and 5A, ONMP and EAP, 10,500.
Yep.
That's 5. Then 5A, same thing, ONMP and EAP for the 550 feet levee section. Now, one must be for the culverts, the other's for the rest, all 550 feet.
Right.
Together, that's 21,000.
Correct.
Do we have to have both of those? Because I don't think Tie and Bond does both of those.
No, we don't have to do.
That's a number.
Correct. We don't have to do both of those. So that's 10,500 right there off the top.
Well, that's we mentioned 113,900, but then right there's 10,500, which is, to the best of my reading at Tie and Bond, only one of those is covered. Here, both. So maybe instead of the 113,900, you take away 10,500. Then I looked and looked and looked, and I didn't find out the cleaning of the pipe. Woodward, did they mention that at all anywhere? I couldn't find it.
They did. They did mention it, but it wasn't. They were looking to use a city vendor to do it.
Okay, that would be the same as Tie and Bond then. Well, Tie and Bond was going to hire the vendor, not a city necessarily.
Right. And I don't know what
now we had
DPW
wetland.
has.
A little lost on what wetlands I went down to the river when we first did it with Tie and Bond. They did a wetland delineation.
Yes.
And the Conservation Commission looked at it. I made some comments, but those are tied little strings around them of ribbon. And how are they going to know where they are if somebody moves the ribbon or they're blown off? And we did some wetland resource delineation. Are we duplicating, or is this additional wetland requirement?
It would be additional because they'd be looking to do what we did in the 9,000 square feet. Did some areas that we are not going to be looking at in this project, and I believe in the wetland delineation, they're going to be looking at the drainage canal itself because that's the inflow area to these culverts. I don't know. I can't say for sure without having them here, but I would imagine that was the case with both Tie and Bond and Woodard and Kern, because you have to get down in there to do whatever work you're going to do. And
There could be a real problem there because that is loaded with tree parts and
right.
Rusted
One
of the pipes.
One of
Culverts.
one of the questions Meredith had, and we talked about it. Meredith Bornstein, our former conservation commission coordinator, was that does that area actually constitute a wetland? She believed parts of it did, and parts of it may or may not. And that's another concern. But these are all things that have to be looked at. And I'm really not sure what Ty and Bond did in the prior one that they're going to include. I know they had done work, and I really don't know what that includes. Whereas with Woodard and Kerr, and they kind of lay it out what they're looking to do. But
in Wetland ID Identification, usually you're looking for certain characteristics. I'm talking about the Conservation Commission.
right,
One is wetland plants, and the other is a chemical change in the soil because of the amount of water over a long period of time. I don't recognize any plants from my experience on the Concom that is located in the area of the so-called culvert ditch that's at the beginning of the culvert flow-in part. And I think, therefore, it's the accumulation of water has reacted with the soils. So there's a soil, I think the term I learned 8 years ago is modulation. And, that's a problem. And it's not because of the levee. The city of Westfield on Little River Levee area from Potters Hollow Road empties out quite a bit of the stormwater into that ditch or canal. And so therefore you've got water going in there over years in large amounts. It's got to have some change on the soil. It could therefore give some thought of, is this a wetland or not? But it's
right.
Difficult because even if it isn't today, if you keep pouring the water in as they do now from storm runoff, it's eventually going to become one.
Right.
Well, so that's a toughie to get through conservation.
Well, here's what Ty and Bond has in their RFP. Permitting assumptions. Our strategy and scope of environmental permitting services is based on the following assumptions. Work is limited to land owned by the city of Westfield or lands to which the city has existing easements. New easements, temporary or otherwise, and or access agreements will not be required to perform the proposed levee maintenance and improved activities, including wetland delineation activities. Proposed project qualifies for consideration as a limited project under the MAWPA, and if requested, the Westfield Conservation Commission will grant limited project status to the activities. The proposed activities will meet the applicable MAWPA to the maximum extent practicable. The project will not meet the requirements for wildlife habitat evaluation under the MAWPA. 50 linear feet of bank, 5,000 square feet of land underwater bordering vegetated lands, BLSF and or undeveloped riverfront area. The project will result in a temporary and permanent alterations below the bank mean annual high water mark of Little River and the discharge dredged and or fill material, example given a cofferdam. However, the alterations will be limited and will result in a less than 5,000 square foot accumulation of work in the LUW and vegetated wetlands and less than 100 cubic yards of dredging. As such, the final MAWPA order of conditions permit will serve as a 401 water quality certificate in the accordance with 314 CMR 9.031 and 1 and 3, and Mass DEP will not invoke discretionary authority under 401 regulations. Again, these are assumptions. The proposed activities and construction schedule will meet the SV notification criteria for Mass GEPs, including general conditions. And pre-construction notification will not be required. Temporary and water controls is the cofferdam. If the removal of trees is required, activity can be time restricted to avoid impacts to the northern long-eared bat, including but not limited to avoiding tree removal during the time of year. Project site and surrounding area are not actual small world begonia habitat. That's a fairly listed species. Army coral will. The U.S. Army Corps review will find that the project will not result in any adverse impacts. Again, these are all assumptions upon federally listed rare species, et cetera, et cetera. No adverse effect under the Massachusetts Wetlands Protection Act, and finding of a no take under the Massachusetts Endangered Species Act, or the project can be conditioned to avoid a take. Thus, the conservation and management permit will not be required. It is not included in the scope of work. A valid Chapter 91 license. That's what it was. Chapter 91. A valid Chapter
90. I knew it was 90 something.
Yeah. A valid Chapter 91 license does not exist for the twin 24-inch diameter CMP outfalls, and as such is not available to be modified to include the construction of a head wall. Further, Mass DEP will include a determination affirming that the construction of the head wall and installation of a temporary cofferdam below the MAHW line of the Little River will not require a Chapter 91 license or permit in accordance with 310 CMR. Please note that our scope does not include wetlands compliance monitoring during construction or request of certificate of compliance to close out the order of conditions related to the culvert repairs. Now, Woodard
now
and Kern,
you know when they talk
that's
about
time
trees,
bond.
if you and when you look at the ditch or the canal,
Yes.
how do you get equipment in there? You're going to have to remove trees, whether it's going to be relining or replacing. You got to get some equipment into that ditch or a canal, whatever you want to call it.
Right.
And therefore, we're going to have an added expense of tree removal. And we know roughly, we just did some. There's going to be $7,000 to $10,000 depending, because some of them are pretty good size, and they're closer to those telephone wires or those wires on Potter's Hollow Road than the ones we remove, which are closer to the river. So this, neither one of them is going to be what I call the final amount of money that's going to be spent.
Right.
In just the engineering stage, because you got to get in there to do the engineering. Then don't forget, there's a construction phase. All this is so they can get a construction firm to look at all the requirements and come in and do it. Now that's going to be another added expense. So if you do all the engineering and the city doesn't want to do the actual construction, you spend a lot of money for nothing.
Right.
In my humble opinion.
Nope. I'm right there with you. Mark Goodness, you want to say anything?
No, I'm listening in here, and right now it sounds like Ty and Bond is, like Steve was saying, they're going to be throwing, oh, we got to do this, oh, we got to do that. I don't go for that.
I don't either. My experience is that you got to be careful to read all that they say and then look at what they, like Chapter 91 with the head walls.
Right.
You have no idea. It said both assume that they can get away with what's there. But that's a head wall right on where the erosion we have in the bank is. They may be more of a problem than either one of them wants to let us know at this moment.
Perhaps. Let me read the Woodard and Kern on their wetland resource delineation. Task 1B. Woodard and Kern's wetland scientists will conduct a site evaluation to identify and characterize existing probable wetland resource areas and to determine the boundary of the BVW and I'm trying to remember what BVW is.
Boarding vegetation wetland.
Thank you, Jack. I knew it was wetland, but I couldn't remember what the B.
6 years on Concom. I should remember something besides modulation.
Bank vegetated wetland, otherwise known as the riparian area, correct, Jack?
Bordering, not bank. Bordering vegetative wetland.
There we go.
Next to you and next to me, that's bordering.
Fair enough. And bank mean annual high water, ordinary high water line to the Little River, 100 feet upstream and downstream of the existing culverts. And I believe Ty and Bond did. I don't know if they did 100 feet or 50 feet in their prior.
I saw both numbers mentioned when I read it. I don't have it.
No, I mean when they did it when we had the 9,000 square feet. I don't remember how far downstream.
Oh no, I don't think they did then. But I think they mentioned they emphasized the 50. But I think they said something about 100.
Yeah, I want to say 50 also.
50 they made a big emphasis of. The 100 they may have put one word in there somewhere down further in the paragraph. It wasn't an emphasis point with Ty and Bond. I remember that.
Right.
Because I said, oh, in fact, I thought 50 was a lot considering the cost.
Right. So continuing with the Woodard and Kern one, so to the 100 feet upstream and downstream of the existing culverts, including the landward side of the culvert that includes the quote-unquote canal. Boundary determinations will be based on the criteria enumerated in the Massachusetts Wetlands Protection Act, Mass General Law 131, Section 40, the Act, and its implementing regulations in 310 CMR 10, the Act regulations. The City of Westfield's Wetlands Protection Ordinance, Sections 1360 through 1370 Ordinance, and its implementing regulations in Federal Clean Water Act 33 USC 1344 and Section 404. Hydraulic soils and plant community composition will be evaluated in accordance with the handbook delineating bordering vegetated wetlands under the Massachusetts Wetlands Protection Act, March 1995, and the field indicators for identifying hydric soils. And that's what you were talking about, Jack. For identifying hydric soils in New England, version 4, May 2018. This site evaluation will be utilized to gather data regarding floristic, topographic, edaphic, and superficial hydraulic site characteristics. I think that
that's important right there, what you just said.
Yeah.
That's a good study that finds out what's going on. You know, I think.
Well, that also helps identify that it's a wetland, right?
Correct.
Well, yeah, but so you got a problem there. From conservation, when you say wetland, we should say don't get within. It says in the law you can't get within 100 feet of it. But we were sort of like saying, well, if you do X, Y, and Z, we'll let you get up to 50 feet. But very tight. You try to get within 50 feet of a wetland, and we went crazy. So therefore, you're going to have a problem at anything that's considered a wetland, and you're right in it. Never mind 50 feet away.
Right.
So, but again, you got to look at what happens when the water goes in there and you can't get it flowing through appropriately through the culverts. The backflow of the river comes through the culverts because you can't stop it. Then you got some major problems. So therefore, you got to look in the long run. What can happen if this doesn't occur, or that doesn't occur, or this occurs? So that's why I like the Woodward a little bit more, because they go into more detail and they go to more of analysis. But again, in reading it, both of them, I think Ty and Bond, having worked with us before, are assuming that they understand what we're thinking. So I think I said before, I don't necessarily know if that's true.
Right.
And Woodward is going right through A, B, C, D, lining it right down specifically, and covering all the nuts and bolts.
Right.
Even the borings. Where will the borings be? They're not going to do the borings, but where will the borings be? Why do you need the borings? Ty and Bond doesn't even mention the word boring.
Right. And they're anticipating the needs of what Army Corps may require for this, which are costs that they have them in here. They may not come into play if Army Corps says we don't need them. So that's also something to consider, that some of these costs may be less than what is in that proposal.
True.
And again, I'm going to stress the point that in our RFP, I laid out exactly what we were looking for, what we had discussed previously. And I laid it out, and Woodard and Kern actually has it listed pretty much word for word in those opening pages of what we had in our RFP. And they go right down them and almost perfectly through the order of what they are and what we asked for, and they bang, 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 bang all the way down the line, whereas Ty and Bond doesn't totally do that.
Well, again, I said before, Woodward has worked with the city, obviously, but not with flood control. So therefore, they're going to nail it down because they never worked with us before. They're assuming nothing. They're going to cover, here's what can happen, here's what you should know. And Ty and Bond has some thoughts of, well, we worked with you before, we assume this, we assume that. We think we know what you're thinking about, so we won't mention it, which adds up in costs when they give us a problem later.
Right.
So,
one
there's
thing
a logic of why Ty and Bond is a little bit shorter.
Right.
I don't know if it's got logic, but there's a reasoning behind why they think they know what we want.
Well, there's one
from
thing
past experience.
Right. There's one thing too I should probably read from Woodard and Kern's thing. Not that Ty and Bond doesn't have this, but Woodard and Kern's project team includes GZA Geoenvironmental Inc. GZA to perform geotechnical engineering services, LEC Environmental Inc. LEC for wetland delineation and permitting services, and WSP USA for survey services. Our team is well versed in the requirements of the project and working with Army Corps to meet the requirements of the Army Corps Levee Safety Program and FEMA NFIP certification. So they do have, and I have seen other stuff that Woodard, both Ty and Bond has extensive experience in this realm, as does Woodard and Curran. I know Woodard and Curran I've seen in some other stuff that was being done. I actually think they're working with Army Corps at the moment on another project. I thought I saw that somewhere on a levee project, but anyway. I wanted to put that in there that Woodard and Curran has experience, as we know Ty and Bond does, because they were involved in construction of some of our flood control dams and structures in the past. And when I say the past, I mean in their original construction. So, but there were certain things that Army Corps wanted, certain things that Army Corps recommended, and they were included, things that this commission spoke about. And one of the other things that I keep forgetting about that I wanted to mention is when Ty and Woodard and Curran mentions when the trash racks, the head walls and the trash racks, they also put in there, and I gotta find it because I want to read it word for word here so I don't misstate something here. Actually, I'm going to back that up for a second. I'll read that in a second. Jack, I want to go to what you were saying on the CMPs and the cleaning the pipes, et cetera, et cetera. The existing CMP drains surface water from a former canal, now the low surface drainage detention area east of the levee to the Little River. There are existing backflow preventers on the downstream side of the CMPs. There are no head walls or trash racks on the upstream or downstream ends of the CMPs. Based on prior CCTV video inspection of the pipes by others, the CMPs are in generally fair condition with the exception of the invert corrosion at the downstream ends and some damage crushing at the upstream ends. During the CCTV video inspection, however, the pipes are at least partially blocked with debris and could not be fully inspected. The segment of the levee 50 feet upstream and 50 feet downstream of the culverts appears to be reasonably maintained and mostly free of trees and woody vegetation, which is because we did some work over the summer. Based on a review of photos of the levee provided by the city and a site visit by Woodard and Curran in late December 2021, it appears that the river side of the levee is lined with riprap, which is true. Part of the levee up to the culverts, and then it stops. Because when that was another thing too, when Army Corps was doing the 550-foot segment repair, they didn't touch the culverts. That's an important thing that I want to let everybody know. Those culverts weren't touched by Army Corps when they did that. They were in much better condition when Army Corps repaired it in '83 versus what they look like now. Kevin was able to verify that in 1983 there was no touching of them. Those are the original construction from 55, 56. The only thing that may have happened, they may have serviced the backflow preventers, but beyond that, there was no changes to those culverts by Army Corps in that repair, other than the whatchamacallit, resurfacing and regrading of the levee to what would be the canal on the intake side of the culverts and on the outside. Now, as we know, when you go down there and you look at the culverts, there is probably maybe 10 feet of one of the culverts sticking out and not maybe 8 feet of the other. Further, they shouldn't be sticking that far out of the levee, and that's because that much is there's been probably 8 feet of erosion, maybe more, maybe less. I don't know what the original part of those culverts sticking out was, but clearly it's eroded considerably far back up and
still is eroding.
And still is eroding, yes. So anyway,
they're sticking out much more. I looked at that too, and I only been on this commission 2 years. And over the 2 years, I can see that there has been some erosion there that it makes the pipe stand out further into the river. We're talking about some rusted type of pipes too. So.
Right. To the point where if you were to stand on the culvert, it flexes and bows down because it's sticking out so far out of the levee structure because so much material is gone around it.
And so rusted too.
And rusted, yeah. Yeah.
I remember somebody stuck a stick toward it and it almost went through the wall of the culvert. One of them.
Where is hold on here. So what I wanted to read was about the head wall and the foot wall, or the head wall on either side of the trash racks, I should say. So one thing that Woodard and Kern had in there, and I can't find it now, but it was interesting. It said that when in that process of designing it, they would be looking at the flow of the river and how that would affect it, and how they could design it so that we wouldn't have obstructions in the trash rack areas again. I'm just looking for that. I know it's here. I just have to find it again. Intent, deliverables. But they made an interesting note there, and I kind of just said what it was, but I'd like to read it verbatim so I'm not misquoting anything. Yeah, of course I can't find it now.
No, whenever you need them, they're hard to find.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of pages there, and the pages are, full of different lines, and it's difficult. I know I tried to backtrack one. I spent about half an hour looking for the stupid thing.
Okay, I found part of what I was looking for. So, based on inquiries with the city and Army Corps staff, there is no available information to support the capacity of the existing twin culverts for existing storm flows. Now, Jack, that was a point you had asked about in the past. Do we know if we need one or two
and that's
culverts?
I saw that in Woodward, but I didn't see that in Ty and Bond.
Right.
Yeah, they're looking at the
So
size of the culvert. I think they're 36 inches in diameter.
24.
And there are two of them.
The 36 was a typo on my part. They're 24-inch, 224-inch.
Oh, they're 24. I read 36 on the thing.
Yeah, that was my fault.
Okay.
That was my fault.
Okay, they're 24. Now, when the river rises and the river's going to try to push back through those two culverts at the head wall area,
right,
and it goes through. Now, you got a lot of problems there. So what happens to block it? And that's part of what I think what you're referring to.
Yeah, well, yeah, no. What it is they're going to analyze what the flow characteristics are of the water flowing out. So one of the things that it says here,
out from the trench,
correct,
the ditch,
to support the capacity of the existing twin culverts, because they don't know an existing storm flow. So one of the questions is what is the design capacity of those pipes to flow, and there might be room there to maybe minimize, like you had said. I think that's what they're getting at. You had said something about if we replaced it with just one pipe, that might be what they're looking at, because there is no, because I'll finish reading it. Understanding the capacity of the culverts is a critical consideration for rehabilitation or replacement, especially if they need to be increased in size based on current watershed characteristics or future precipitation trends. Our team is proposing a hydrologic and hydraulic analysis for the culverts to support the alternatives analysis for culvert rehabilitation versus replacement. Additionally, this analysis will support the city's efforts to meet the FEMA criteria for interior drainage analysis at 44 CFR 6510. So that is a interesting thing, because we didn't ask for that, but they saw the need for it, and that is exactly what you had asked for in the past, that information, which we
in the past I did, yeah, because my first question was, this was to the engineers from the Army Corps of Engineers the first time I went down there with him. And I looked at him and said, do we need these culverts? And he said, well, if you didn't have water in that, we called it the canal or the ditch, you wouldn't need either one of them. But
Right.
because you're getting that flow in from Potters Hollow Road, you're getting water in there. Now you got to have them to get that water from the ditch to the river, which means it's got to go through the levee. It
Right.
doesn't help the levee any. In fact, it weakens the levee, what we're seeing right now, because you have to do its replacement. But I asked, then I thought of, and I didn't ask the engineer, so I'll stop there. That's what I did with him. Then I thought of, well, why two? Could we have one? And if you have to reline or replace one, it's going to be a lot cheaper than doing two.
Right.
You would have to block up the other one, though, because you can't just leave a void air space. So, but it would keep the cost down. But again, somebody's got to look at that. And that's the only one is Woodward's that says, I'll look at what is the capacity of flow.
Right. And they say it's not that they're going to look at it. They say it's a critical consideration. That's their exact words. It is a critical consideration for rehabilitation or replacement, which is
right. Well,
accurate.
that's what when I say look at it, I wasn't emphasizing how much looking or what degree.
Right.
But that's important. I mean, but they could come up and say both of those together. If you had, because we haven't really had a major hurricane since '83. I think we have some smaller ones, but not major. In fact, I read somewhere in the reports that the levee has never been threatened even to 50% of what they built it for.
Right. I mean, Irene would have been the last big one, and that was 2011. But it didn't get stressed out to that level. I don't know what it was actually stressed to because I didn't go to Little River Levee to look at it. I know Little River was exceptionally high. I have one picture of the, if you go down Ponders Hollow to the end, there's that firefighter training area. And I have a picture of that area where the water is incredibly high. I imagine it was quite up the levee structure. But we have not seen it that high since that time. And I've never seen it since I've been on the commission because 2011, that was, I didn't know it existed. Well, let me read one more thing, Jack.
Okay.
Which is interesting. And this is the optional cross section. It ties into the optional cross section. Little River updated hydraulic and hydrologic analyses for the optional cross section survey. A hydrologic and hydraulic model is available for the Little River to support the design of the levee embankment. Our team will review the existing model and incorporate it into the design effort for the levee embankment protection, sizing of riprap armoring, and design of a head wall structure for the culverts for stability and to minimize debris accumulation. So they're looking at that to minimize, the stability of the design and to minimize the debris accumulation. This is optional. We anticipate that this effort will be required by Army Corps to demonstrate appropriate bank protection based on modeled surface water elevations, velocities, and bank shear stress forces. It is possible that additional river cross sections may be needed to support the updated H&H model for Little River. Additional survey for river cross sections, therefore, has been included as an optional scope if needed. So they're planning on doing a cross section, but there's an optional one on top of that. So they're anticipating Army Corps needing and requiring this. Now, there's two parts to this. There's an optional one that's in addition to what they're actually planning to do in this cross section. So I want to make that clear. They're looking at doing this because they want to they're anticipating Army Corps doing it. I don't know if Ty and Bond did that because I don't see it in there. So again, that's another.
I don't recall reading it, but I read it twice.
No, I didn't see it in there. I know, again, Ty and Bond is Wood and Kern is anticipating certain things that we didn't ask for because we didn't know to ask for. So, but again, those were just a couple key things that I saw that are hey, look, we probably want that because if they're anticipating Army Corps wanting it, yeah, we kind of need that. So again,
that's why they're 113,900 versus when I add the two together, so 83,000 some odd hundred with the tie and bond. Right. But again, I want to point out you got to remove the trees. That's a cost. You've got other factors involved there that could increase either one of them, like that Chapter 91. What if they say you got to do X, Y, and Z? We don't do them for free.
Right.
So I don't know what the final cost will be until we get into the program to some degree. We can get close to it, but I wouldn't want to guarantee that we have those numbers in the two documents you received in the final analysis.
Right. Casey, do you have any input on this?
Sorry, Al, what was your question?
Do you have any input on all of this?
I think it sounds like I haven't seen either proposal, but it sounds like the Woodard and Curran proposal is more comprehensive. I'm sure if asked, Ty and Bond could probably do similar. But that being said, I mean, there's still the issue of the funding source. So
Right.
that's the hang up. So, I mean, I think
That's a big hang up. And my problem, again, as I said, and I'll repeat myself.
Hold on 1 second,
That's
Jack.
only
Hold on,
for the
Jack.
engineering phase. Now you got to
Jack.
go construction later.
Right, Jack. Hold on 1 second. Go ahead, Casey. Finish what you were saying,
we've
please.
had successes working with both Woodard and Curran and Ty and Bond, so I cannot knock either organization for their professionalism and expertise. So
Exactly.
But either one of them, you know, I mean, Woodard and Curran gave you what you asked for, so I
Right.
trust the sticker price on that.
Now, as far as the funding goes, in theory, we have the funds to do it because we have this ARPA money that was dedicated by the state specifically to the city of Westfield, specifically for levees and dams. And again, that was thanks to State Senator John Velas and State Representative Kelly Pease, who both advocated for monies for the city of Westfield. And I know there's 75,000, and I understand that there might be more actually tied into that amount for levees and dams, but I don't know that for sure. But I do know.
Let me stop you. That scares me.
Sure.
It's for levees and dams.
Correct.
Who determines which amount of that goes to levees? Or if all of it goes to levees, or what has to go to dams? I don't think that's in our purview. I think
No.
the mayor and the city council are going to. So what if they don't
Correct.
do it the same way we want? What if they don't give all 75,000 to the levee? They say we'll do X amount to levee, X amount to the dams, because they got two dams that have to be taken care of.
Correct.
Very
I don't know what $75,000 is going to do. The other issue with that is the double dipping clause for the NRCS dams. The city has to secure funding, and Jim Lyons was pretty adamant that ARPA funds, because they came from the federal government, even though they passed through the state, there's still federal funds cannot be used to supplement the city's portion.
Of the dams.
Of the dams, correct. So I don't know what the city
but the
would
levee's
use that
still
for.
okay.
Correct. And as of right now, there is no, from the flood control standpoint, commission standpoint, and my knowledge, there is no active plan to do anything at the dams whatsoever with any funds, because nothing has been set up. Even though we've been told to do certain things by a certain time deadline, and I did send an email with a letter to the mayor and city council pleading with them to start the process of getting ready for those two dams, land acquisition, et cetera, et cetera. It hasn't happened yet, and I haven't seen any action on those two. So I can't see the mayor and city council putting that money aside for something at the dams when we don't have anything even in place. Whereas in this case, the Flood Control Commission has a proposal to do what needs to be done, which Army Corps is telling us and has been telling us for almost 10 years now to do, to make these repairs. And the reality is, if this isn't repaired, I mean, it's not the best example, but it's a similar example where you had a culvert failure on what was the road? City View. The culvert failed
You're
at
talking
City
about
View.
Jack's Brook going out the road into the
Yes.
little river, and they have
Yes.
a problem. That's City View.
Right. The road collapsed, and that was because a culvert fell apart. Well, this is a levee, and if the levee collapses, that's an extremely serious situation. Not only if there's a flood going on and it collapses, you have, I mean, that's just a bad scenario all around, but we also have the repair scenario. So the cost to repair the levee rather than fix a culvert is substantially more. And the federal government, because we haven't done what Army Corps told us to do, and we haven't kept up our part of the local cooperation agreement. If the levee is to fail, which is, as time goes on, it's only getting worse, and that levee fails because the culvert collapses, the city's going to have to tear it apart and rebuild it at a very high cost, far more
by
than what we're
itself,
talking about.
without help.
Without help,
by
because
itself.
because we've lost our quote unquote insurance with Army Corps because we haven't maintained our part of the agreement. So, and I'll stress, if any city councilors or the mayor are listening, the repair of this culvert through the levee is very important, because we're trying to address this. As time goes on, it's been getting worse and worse. We're trying to address this before it becomes a much more expensive repair. It's not just looking at this and saying, hey, we want this fixed because it's a problem. It's because this will become a very substantial repair and a cost if it fails, and eventually it will. It's we can't keep kicking the can, and we've been kicking it for many, many years, and we've had 10 years to repair this system, and we haven't repaired it still. We've tried. This commission has tried in vain, and we've gotten quite far, and we're on the precipice of that first major step to getting it done. So I guess that's that. Now, Jack, you were starting to say something. Where do we go with this?
Yeah, I mean, we're talking about comparing the two proposals. We're talking about plans and money and where it is going to come from, etc. So, when do we take action on which one of the two proposals? That be in the future or tonight?
That's a good question. Mark Goodness.
Wish you had a good answer.
Mark Goodness,
Sure.
You've been quiet. Do you have anything you want to add to this?
Well, by looking at it, I would say that where the Woodard and Kern is a better complete analysis and everything we asked for, and then some. It looks like they were looking forward to what we didn't even see. And to me, that is, I don't know, Case, but like you said, they're awful. What's the word I'm looking for? They're looking for every possible problem that could arise and presenting it there. They're even looking at the future of what could happen.
They're deeper on the details, I think, is what you're referring to.
Right. They're more in detail to what's going on at the moment. But Ty and Bond could have overlooked it, without, and they were thinking about it. We never know without the two representatives being online to explain it. So we have to make a decision from what we have in front of us at the moment. That's all I can say.
Okay. I mean, looking at these, and Ty and Bond and Woodard and Kern both said if we have questions, we can ask them. I wasn't going to invite them to this meeting because there's still other questions outlying, and Jack was referring to the costs and how we're going to pay for these things. Now, I have two trains of thought on this. One is, since we have a quorum, we make a decision on what we think our best opinion is of this and our recommendation, and forward it to the mayor and city council and see what they want to do with it. I mean, if we had the money in our budget and we were operating in a normal situation, it wouldn't be an issue for this commission to push forward on this. But given the conversation I had with the mayor, the whole future of this is a question mark. And again, as you said, if we spend, this money, and as I was saying, we spend the money and we put it on a shelf, that would kind of be a waste of money. But at the same time, this needs to get done, and it can't keep getting pushed off, because sooner or later this thing's going to fall apart, and it's not getting any better. It's getting substantially worse. Between the erosion on the bank, the corrosion in the pipes, and the debris accumulation inside the pipes. It's a ticking time bomb of what's going to happen first. What part will give way? Will the slope of the levee give way because of the erosion? I mean, we've lost at least 5 feet just upstream from the culverts in the last year and a half. I wouldn't even say a year and a half. It's been the last year. Just thinking about our reports, it's been the last year that we've lost about 5 feet just upstream from these. And then at the culverts themselves, you just got to look at them and you can see how far has eroded out of the bank of these pipes are sticking out of. I mean, it's a substantial chunk of the levee toe is gone. So, and then you have the corrosion, and then you also have the flood factor. If we have a major flood, which we're bound to have one at any point in the future, and the odds aren't in our favor because we haven't had one in quite some time, so we're overdue. This thing, I've said it in our annual report. Army Corps said it. This thing will not stay together. This will come apart in a major flood. There's no question about that. And then that incurs flooding, down Ponders Hollow Road, the DPW, all the facilities are there. And as some people had argued in the past that it wasn't possible, we saw during the flash flooding, which verified older accounts from the 50s that water does indeed flow down Ponders Hollow Road and down Broad Street like a small river flowing into the center of city and finding its lowest elevations to accumulate in. We saw that in the flash flooding over the summer where water was actually flowing. I have video of it. It wasn't from Little River, it was from all the water flowing down all the streets, but it's the same idea. And the historical account of the 55 flood was that water was flowing quite readily down Ponders Hollow Road, down Broad Street, and other nearby streets. So,
well, if you remember from the original paperwork from Army Corps of Engineers, the reason they built the Little River Levee is after the 1955 flood, the destruction that occurred. But the area they mentioned, the post office, they mentioned South Middle School. South Middle School. They mentioned the Big Y. They mentioned the Boys and Girls Club. They mentioned all the businesses on Ponders Hollow Road, including our own building for the DPW. So it was built to do the emergency protection in that area. They mentioned how many millions of dollars it would cost and potentially lives that in just that area could be lost if we had a major occurrence, which we haven't had, in a while. Quite a while.
Right.
I can really attest to how deep the water was during 55 because I was up in Pleasant Street, and boy, oh boy, Little River Levee, it looked like a river coming down there, down that street.
On Pleasant Street?
Yep.
So you got South Maple must have got clobbered also.
Yep.
And then the Army Corps put in the levee.
And Broad Street must have got clobbered also.
Oh.
And east
of
West Silver Street.
The only thing that didn't get covered down on Broad Street was the old Red Cross building. It was on a knoll. That was the only one that didn't get covered because that had the water buffalo that we all rode boats to get water.
And that's where our fire department is sitting right now, our major one.
Right.
So we got to think of protecting that because you don't have that, you got problems. There are some other stations, but that's the major one.
Right.
Correct.
So my only concern, again, I was willing to vote tonight too also, but my concern is, okay, we do the engineering studies and we don't have all the numbers because I just mentioned before, you don't know about the chapter 91 with the head wall and how much more there. And you got trees I know are going to have to come out. I didn't see either one of them putting a price in their proposal for that. So the prices will change, maybe even higher. But again, we can approve it because you can put out an agreement for one of the proposals, and you can go through certain stages of the planning of it. But when the final dollars have to be paid out, now that's not the early stages, that's like a year from now. I've been told we do, but I'm not too sure because I'm a little curious there. Are we going to get stuck with money that isn't being able to be appropriated? Because the mayor also put something out, if I read in the paper correctly. You got to sort of lock in your money by March something or other. I forgot, 3rd or whatever the date was.
Yep.
And so we've got to take an action to lock it in. But if you lock it in, are you really going to have the ability to pay it in the last step? I know you can sign up proposals and you can do all kinds of stuff up to that point. But the final thing is when you hand them a check. Do we have that clear all the way through? I don't feel comfortable there.
No. So here's the issue. So we have some of the funds. If we were to go with the Woodard and Kern, we do not have all the funds to cover that. We do not have it. The coverage comes from asking the mayor and city council to appropriate monies from the ARPA funds that were dedicated by the state. And again, State Senator John Velas and State Representative Kelly Pease procured for the purpose of levees and dams specifically. We have a portion of that money taken and appropriated by the mayor and city council to the Flood Control Commission for the purpose of this covering the cost, the additional cost to cover the Woodard and Kern expenditure. And we have the money. And we encumber our funds for a purchase order to Woodard and Kern before March, I believe it's March 4th, which is a Friday.
3rd or 4th, yeah. That's coming up fast.
Yep. We have a week and a half, I believe. I want to make sure it's the 4th.
Next Friday.
Yeah, next Friday. So we have a week and a half, less than a week and a half as of tonight, to encumber those funds for this purpose, and then ask the mayor and city council for the additional monies. We can't do it though unless we have a guarantee of those monies. Now, if we don't lock it in, and obviously we have to explain this to the mayor, if we don't lock that money in, what we have left in our budget, then it all gets swept out, and we have no money to do anything except for what I have already encumbered, which is the encumberment for the cost of gas and electric, Westfield Gas and Electric bill for Williams Riding Way, and the last mowing of the fiscal year. So that money, those monies have been encumbered and put aside, and we have a chunk of money left. And the mayor did ask me about that money, why we haven't spent it, and I explained to him that we had only just gotten these returned to us at the end of January, and I handed him copies of them, which he was going to read, and I have not had feedback from him on them after that point. But I explained the needs as best I could to him in the time that I had for getting this done. So and again, the idea of doing this is A, so we have numbers to work with, and B, so we get ourselves to a point being shovel ready for available state grants for flood control and federal grants for flood control and infrastructure. And the state ones happen every year, the federal ones happen every year, plus there's additional emphasis on flood control infrastructure because of climate change. There's increased rainfall predictions. There is a number of things and initiatives in Massachusetts and at the federal level emphasizing upgrades and repairs to flood control. And again, that's also part of the emphasis on this national levee safety program, is to get municipalities where they need to be on their levees, because just like the dams, municipalities have not been maintaining their levees, and it's not just us, it's a nationwide issue. And that's why Army Corps and FEMA, because of an act of Congress about 5 years ago, have created this. This is an act of Congress that pushed this, and coming to a theater near you, we will all be responsible for increased caretaking of our levees and repair. And again, that goes back to Armbrook and Powder Mill Brook, which is another issue. If the city doesn't do what it needs to do there, the city will be paying for the entire repair and rehabilitation of these dams to a state level, which is a substantially larger cost than what we would be paying through the federal program, because the federal government's covering 65% of the cost.
Well, I think definitely we, if we're smart, are going to encumber the money as best we can think of what's the money we're going to have. I mean, what's left in the budget. I haven't seen the budget expenditure lately. I know you mentioned a couple things, and the money from you said 75,000, I believe it was, that was obtained by our state rep and state senator. So I would encumber that and be specifically saying is for the engineering study for the Little River Levee. If we don't encumber it, it's gone March 3rd. Boy, oh boy, oh boy, we missed our job. We didn't do our job.
Right.
So definitely, I'm all for encumbering. And do you have the exact numbers? Though I don't want to encumber.
I don't have the exact,
or encumber less than what we have.
I do not have an exact figure for you, Jack. I
So
have.
What do we do in a
have,
motion to encumber?
Well, therein is the question. I think what we need to do, and this is my opinion, because encumbering it means we have to actually vote to spend the money, and we don't necessarily have all of that money. We have to get the mayor and city council to appropriate additional funds to cover the cost to fulfill the obligation. That's the catch here. So what my recommendation is that we discuss it here to forward a proposal and vote to forward a proposal to the mayor and city council, what the plan is, what we want to do, and the monies that we will need from the city council and mayor to appropriate out of that ARPA money that John Velas and Kelly Pease got for us to cover the cost of this will get done.
And engineering in our budget.
Correct. Yes. Take the majority of take what we have available, which is the remainder of our budget after the encumbrance that we already have, and whatever the difference is, and do what we have proposed from one of these two, if we choose the Woodard and Current. Now, if we choose to do the tie and bond one, which doesn't sound like any one of the three of us like, that we have that in our budget.
That's a tough choice there. I mean,
but exactly.
It sounds to me, I'm rephrasing it, but it sounds to me that we're saying that with one, we may not have enough money and therefore we have a problem. With the other, we got enough money to do it, but maybe not exactly what we were looking for when we set out the proposals, and we don't know exactly how it's going to affect the design and repairs of the levee.
Right. Well, again,
because we don't, like I said before, this is not the final number. We got to put those trees down. If Chapter 91 with the head walls costs us more money,
yep.
Well, we got to have enough there. If we go right to the penny, we can lock it in. But if we start approving up to the penny without having a little cushion, usually I think most projects have a 3%. Well, back in the day, had a 3% cushion there in case of unforeseen.
Right.
We got to handle that idea too.
Well, again, that would also come in with that ARPA money. That would be the backup, because it would leave plenty of money to cover any additional costs that were unanticipated. And that was the idea. Well, that was the idea behind our when I had conversation with John Velas and with Kelly Pease, and you did as well, Jack. And I think Mark Goodness did at one point as well for our broken powder mill. One of the things I emphasized to both of them in my conversations is that we needed money for the Little River Levee to do exactly what we're looking at doing, plus the construction costs, and monies to cover work that we need to do at Armbrook and Powder Mill outside of the cost share, because there's other things that we needed to do there, but we're not in a position to do anything there.
Well, let me ask you this question.
Sure.
And again, the time is the problem. With Woodward, do we have a chance to respond to them and say, we like what you wrote, however, we only have X amount of dollars. What things in there can you cut and still meet our goal?
I mean, that's possible. I don't see
emergency action plan is very important. I know, but Steve will probably shoot me with this comment. But if we don't have that money, operation manual you got to have. The emergency. You said earlier that
right.
No, it could cost life and death, but it isn't required in black and white at this moment.
Right.
Maybe
well,
in the future.
In Woodard, yes. Yep. Right. So
Ooh, I don't want to do that. I don't
yeah,
want to do that.
no. So right. So what we
Go to council. I lost the last part. To do what? Go to
Can you
council.
You'd go
To do
to
what?
the
I missed that.
council, you'd go to the council to get the funding.
right. So on that note, Jack, what you're saying, and so Peter understands, the O&M and the EAP, the O&M maintenance, operation and maintenance manual, and the emergency action plan, in the Woodard and Kern one are additional
Covered.
costs. They're additional costs. $9,300 for the entire system. So
Oh, but we don't need the whole entire system right now. That's
right.
That's
I just want to be clear.
feet.
I just want to be clear though. So that is the additional in there. So when you look at that $113,000, there's a 5A, 10,500 comes out of it. So there's one O&M and EAP just for the part that we're looking to repair. So everybody's on the same page. So there's two different ones there in that total
Right.
cost.
10,000 something. I think.
So there's
each, if I recall, 'cause I mentioned it earlier.
Right. So if we take out 1D, 1E, and 5B out of these costs, let me do a quick tally of what those are if we don't include those. But the problem is that Army Corps may require us to do at least one of those, if not two of those, which is the subsurface investigation and the river cross-section survey, which Woodard and Kern says that they may require us to do. And again, anything that we're doing here, Army Corps could kick all of this back and say, you know what, you need to do this, this, and this on top of all of that. And it's not up to our levee safety manager. That could come from at the Pentagon. So from the higher ups at Army Corps. That's, everything is open to speculation. Even though Army Corps has been included, you never know when you're dealing with stuff like this.
That's
So
what
hang on
government, yeah.
Yeah. So
If I could just weigh in.
absolutely, Casey.
Casey here. I'm wondering if you just maybe the consensus should be for the commission to vote on which one you want to go with. We like this one or we like this one. Then you whatever funding you've got, you can put towards it, but there would be that further request to the mayor or from the mayor to council for a cash appropriation to supplement to make up the difference should you go with the Woodard and Kern. I mean, I think you're going to have those same, if you go with tie and bond, you're going to have that same thing where there's going to be these add-ons, but so I think that's where you guys are at. You go with tie and bond knowing that there's going to be these extras down the line, or do you go with Woodard and Kern and know that you're short on funds, but there is that request. I do know that our city purchaser, Tammy Teft, is on vacation this week, so we're not really going to get much guidance there. But I think she's back next week. So there is, we have till the 4th, I think, to get your unencumbered funds put into a purchase order. So, and I'm happy to have that conversation or help kind of move this along. But it's, I think you need to kind of come to a consensus as to which party you want to go with or recommend going with, even if you can't tie up the funds. And I'm not sure what our city engineer what his thoughts are on the matter, but certainly his opinion would be appreciated as well.
Yes. Thank you, Casey.
Al, the bottom line is the longer they put it off, the higher the costs go. We know the city has a history of, putting things off. Green River Bridge. How many millions did we spend doing the study to put the bridge in and never do it? Just every 2 years, a couple $100,000, do a study. Had they done this 5 years ago, 10 years ago, the cost would be nowhere near what it is now. They've got to make a decision, either spend the money now at this cost or wait another year or two and the costs go up, double, triple, or you have a major failure and then you're out millions. It has to be laid out to them. They've been dragging their feet. You got to have your priorities. When the mayor was running, he talked about we had $7 million in free cash. Why wasn't it being spent for the necessities of the city? Well, this is a necessity. And if you need 120,000 to start the necessity, then the money should be appropriated. You got 75 from the state, so you're not asking that much. You're asking for about another 35,000 out of the city to get this started. The longer they wait, the higher the costs are going to go. They've got to stop living in that bubble that we're never going to have a problem. We're protected. We're not going to have rain. We won't have any of that. They got to come to the realization. And sooner they do, the faster things can get moving forward. Had they done this years ago, you wouldn't have lost your funding from FEMA and the Army Corps. You know that. You've been fighting.
That's true.
Yeah.
Yep.
They've got to, as they say, either do the defecation or get off the pot.
Yes. So, taking what Casey was saying and what I was starting to say earlier, my thought is we take what we have, present it to the mayor and city council, and say, this is what we recommend to you. This is what we think should happen. Here's what we have for available funds. We put it in your capable hands.
Well, that second remark is questionable.
The rub is, the finances, but that's the city's problem. It's above us. We asked for a certain amount of money to cover this in our beginning of our financial budgeting last year.
Exactly, and the feet were dragged on that because this should have been done last year.
Right. We tried to get the money. The money was taken out. The mayor, Mayor Hummus tried to put it back in after the fact, plus some. And here we are. So my recommendation is a motion to, and again, Casey's going to help us. We try to push forward on one of the two that we like, and present it to the mayor and city council and say, look, we need to cover the costs. We need to get this started.
We got to encumber some funds though, because March 3rd coming up. What if
that would have to happen?
Meet the...
That would have to happen next week when, as Casey identified, when Tammy Teff comes back from vacation. Casey said he would help us work through this. City engineer obviously would have to give us some kind of input in this process, and it's going to take some conversations with the mayor to get this before the city council in a timely fashion.
I have a little bit of a problem there because the rule he set up was by March 3rd, you had to encumber your funds. Otherwise, they can be taken out and moved somewhere else. But when I read the newspaper, there are places where they're going to need some money, which, wasn't quite in the original plans a couple of years ago in the future.
Right.
But again,
well,
I think we have to encumber the funds. I think we have to pick somebody tonight. But to go to and write it out for the city council and the mayor to pick, because I don't think we're going to have. We might even have a commission long enough to act to do that point. Right.
Well, again, we put this to them, and this is what we want to do. And if they choose not to do it, and the money our budget goes back into the coffers, so be it. But it's not. We've done what we can do, and we move forward.
I agree there.
We'll have done our due diligence. Yes.
Yes, we can. As I'm repeatedly reminded, we're just an advisory body. We're advising, and we've done our due diligence.
We're not just an advisory body. We're more than that.
I understand that, but that's So
There's
anyway,
some people that believe that, but that's erroneous. That's a misconception. That's totally wrong. We are not an advisory body. Does not have a budget, and we wouldn't be doing what we're doing now, appropriating monies if we were advising, because we have to go to somebody else to say we advise you. But we're not. We're saying we're going to lock it with this one, and we're going to ask for the encumbrance of these funds before March 3rd, and then the city purchasing agent may have to modify something after, but we got to lock it in.
Right.
Now, I don't want to wait past March 3rd, because if I was on a city council, I'd say, well, you had to March 3rd to do this. You knew that.
Jack,
you didn't do it.
Jack, may I suggest you make a motion, please?
Yes. Thank you.
I haven't given I see a lot of situations here. I normally like to think something in a logical way, and I'm finding that it's a little difficult because there's so many avenues of how this could get messed up. I prefer not to be the originator of the motion. I'm not comfortable with that at this moment.
I make
Okay.
a motion that we select Woodard and Curran for going forward and go to the mayor and city council and purchasing to get it all appropriated and get it in the works.
Now that accounts for the March 3rd lockout.
Well, I will. Hold on. So we have a motion on the floor. Do we have a
I'll
second?
second you because a second just means you can discuss it.
Right. So discussion. Let me make a quick point to your question, Jack. So the mayor is the one sweeping the budget. The mayor can say, well, I'm not going to sweep the flood control budget because we have to do X, Y, Z. Sound reasonable?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but don't
Correct.
count on him not sweeping because
Well, if again, it goes back to if he sweeps it, then that's his decision. And we
That's
gave
correct.
our best. We gave our best recommendation.
I agree with the recommendation and enough in there so that we have met that March 3rd thing to lock it in. And if we locked it, you can always change and lose from the lock, but you can't add to the lock. In other words, what I'm saying, if the purchasing agent comes in and says, oh, you can do this or that. Oh, okay. What effect would it have?
Right.
A little less. Okay, fine.
Right.
But if you haven't got it locked in,
Well, I'll move the motion.
I don't think you're going to get any more
Tammy-
to it either.
Tammy has to ask. Tammy is the key to that. Tammy has to answer that question. She's not available to do it.
Right.
So as Casey said, he'll talk with her. I'll talk with her, and we'll try to come to some kind of consensus in the next 5 days.
Okay. So the motion, then you want to repeat it back so I can hear it? I'm looking for two things. One, that we're picking one of the two.
Yes. So the motion will. The motion
And
was.
the other thing is that we are going to lock in the money and ask. So it's done by Mayor March 3rd. We're locking in
Well, if we
the money from
can.
our budget and from the other fund and up to the city council to,
Well, the thing is if we can lock in the money. So
okay,
Tammy
in the
Fest has to
motion, I
answer.
should say our intent is to.
Right. So
That's
so
what I
lock in.
said, Jack.
yes.
That's
So
what I said.
Mark Goodness, go ahead and restate your motion just for clarity.
Okay. Now, if I can remember exactly what I said here. I made the motion that we go with Woodard and Curran and put it forward to the mayor and city council and purchasing to come up with the funding. That's all we can do
Taken from our.
from our budget and from the ARPA.
Okay, good enough. Now, how does that cover, though, from an old politician going way back in the 50s, the idea of the mayor saying you should have it encumbered by March 30th? Some council would say, well, you could have encumbered it. You didn't encumber it. This date is the 10th.
Well,
If we move it now, and it should go to them by a week from tomorrow. And if they don't move on it, so be it. That's not our fault.
Okay, in your motion, I would like to see the word and appropriately encumber the funds
well,
in
here's
our
the problem.
budget and from the.
Right.
Huh?
So
I said that, Jack.
right.
I don't think
so,
you used the word encumber.
no, he didn't. He didn't. Hold on, Jack. Here's the question. The $1 million question. We don't know if we can actually encumber that money. That's a question for Tammy Teft. But we're going to move this forward to the mayor and Tammy Teft for Woodard and Curran. And if we can encumber it and the mayor's going to give us the ARPA money, it moves forward. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah, I like the word encumber included in the motion by March
Well,
3rd.
but we don't know if we can do that, Jack. That's the problem. We don't know if we can physically do that.
There's a motion on the floor. Move
Yep,
the
there's a motion. I'm going to call for a vote because we can't put that in there, Jack.
That's called call the question.
Yes.
That's how you demand the vote.
Yes.
Call the question.
Roll call vote. Mark Goodness.
Yes.
Jack. Yeah. Jack Leary.
You go to change my last name. Yes.
Al Jaguar, yes. Okay, motion carries. We're done with that.
A quick question
Okay.
for you, Al.
Yes. Go ahead.
Did you encumber the money for putting more fuel into the pump station?
That has been
You-
taken care of. It's been
Okay,
paid
thank
for.
you.
Yep, it's been
Thank
paid for. I'll get into that
You're
in a
gonna cover
second.
the mowing too.
Yes, I'll get into that in a second. Okay, moving on, because we spent a lot of time on that. I knew it would be a
Wait,
discussion, but I didn't realize we'd be doing that much on it. Okay,
Well, it's a major issue.
It is.
With
It
some
is.
major ramifications.
yeah, because there's too many unknowns with the situation. So moving on to new business.
Way too many unknowns. Way too many. That's why
I know.
move on,
I
move
fear-
on.
Well, we got to move on, Jack, because we're getting kind of long.
I agree.
All right, new business. Item 10, annual report of the Westfield Flood Control Commission. So I'm still working on details. It's not complete yet, obviously. Otherwise, you guys would have a copy of it in draft form. I'm pushing through on it, and my plan is to, when it's completed, because we may or may not be able to vote on it, I'm just going to submit it when it looks relatively clean. I'll ask for comments on it and edit it accordingly and submit it to the powers that be. And that's the long and short of that.
Sounds like a good move.
Agreed.
Okay, moving on. Item 11, future of the Westfield Flood Control Commission plans to dissolve and transfer role to DPW. So this is the other big topic of the evening. So in discussion with the mayor a couple weeks ago, the mayor laid out his general idea of what will happen with the Flood Control Commission. That the commission would be dissolved, so approved by the mayor and city council. It clearly requires a number of changes to the city charter because the Flood Control Commission is in the charter, obviously, and there are other ordinances and other bodies and other parts that affect various parts of the city that involve flood control, such as the floodplain administration ordinance and CONCOM, and there's also one in the bike path.
Well, there's an ordinance that created the Flood Control Commission. So you
Correct.
got one strictly to create you.
Right. So all of that has to be changed and or deleted. In that discussion with the mayor, we went back and forth on a few things. His plan makes sense in that the Flood Control Commission's role would be rolled into the DPW. His plan includes a person in DPW to oversee flood control specifically, which is something we asked for. We do need a floodplain coordinator or somebody at the city level full-time dealing with flood control matters and overseeing that. Now, how that comes to be, I have no real details on that. I don't know if the mayor has all that worked out yet. There was discussion of the DPW board being worked out. And this commission would be dissolved. Now, I did have some questions about the some of the things that we oversee and how that would play out, and I didn't really get clear answers on how that would happen. One of them being our role in the floodplain administration. We don't have a huge role in the floodplain other than making recommendations to the CONCOM and planning board on new permits on the floodplain. However, in our ordinance, one of the things we do have is injunctionary powers if we find that there's something that's going to threaten the greater flood control program of the city. So we do have the teeth in our ordinance to stop or ask the city solicitor to enforce certain aspects of what we believe to be a threat to the flood control program. So in that respect, we do have some teeth in the floodplain. But we only have an advisory role to CONCOM and planning when it comes to projects. And we have been doing that right along. Through a lot of struggles, we've managed to make that come to pass because it wasn't happening for a long time. So we have been dealing with floodplain development. And asking a lot of questions and recommending some changes, and all of the applicants have been very accommodating to us in the recommendations we've made. A perfect example of a situation that Nabil Hanoush with his project off of Route 20 when he was building that, there was a whole chaos, no fault of our own, and we worked with Nabil and Mr. Levesque, and we got things sorted out, made sure pieces were in place, and we got it done. So there's that aspect. How will the flood control play into the floodplain? That's an important piece because you have to deal with the NFIP, which is the National Flood Insurance Program, through FEMA, which governs the rates for ratepayers for flood protection. So if you have flood insurance, I think it's 98% of all flood insurance is backed by FEMA through the NFIP, and that is tied to our flood control infrastructure being functional with reduced rates. So if our flood control infrastructure is accredited, which most of it is, except for Little River Levee, that allows for a reduction in your insurance rates, or a requirement that you do not have to pay for flood insurance unless you want it, depending on the level of protection that they find for your location, for your home or business or property. With flood control in the DPW being divorced from the floodplain, if there's no tie in there, I see a possible issue as time goes on, a separation there, which is not healthy for flood control in general. And because of coming regulations with FEMA and the National Levee Safety Program and tie-ins back into the NFIP, that stuff is all going to have to be figured out by the city. It's above us. But those are some of my concerns with what the mayor proposed. I think DPW has a lot of resources to put towards it. Casey is very well versed with his involvement here on the flood control, about flood control in general. Some of the concerns that we've had in the past with prior plans that were similar was that there was no one person dedicated in DPW to deal with flood control issues and the greater flood control program. And it kind of just creates what we've had for years, where it was kind of left to the four winds. Despite this commission existing, things weren't being done, and the commission kind of, as time went on, got less and less attention, and things just got progressively worse. So what I don't want to see is that happen again, where greater issues in the DPW that garner more attention, such as roads, bridges, other infrastructure, it's a higher priority because it's more in your face and people deal with it every day. Whereas, as I say, even in my own catch thing on some of my things that I put out, nobody sees this stuff and nobody cares. It's an idle giant until you need it. And when you do need it, it has to work, because if it doesn't, you better have a paddle. So those are my bigger concerns of, where the program goes, but also what is the future of Armbrook and Powder Mill going forward, and the going forward with the repairs at Little River Levee. The going concern of what this commission has now, how does that transition into whatever the DPW system will be? There's ways there, but I see a very large gap that may be detrimental to what we've tried to accomplish over the last 10 years in this commission. I do have some reservations, but I think the mayor's plan is sound. It's just some of the finer details need to be worked out, and I think more conversations need to be had as to how those details work out. And again, in light of other things that are coming from the federal government, which I've been talking about for a number of years now. I've seen all this stuff on the wall. I'm very involved with Mass FM, which is a state association of flood safety officials and floodplain officials and private entities all networking together. I'm also involved. I'm also a member of the ASDSO, which is a national association of dam owners for safety, and that also both of these organizations tie into active FEMA involvement, Department of Army Corps, and here in Mass, the Office of Dam Safety is also involved. There's also involvement from other municipalities across the country. And then now there's this new National Levee Safety Program, which is coming out, which is going to have another whole layer of stuff involved. And again, I'll go back to the FEMA component. The FEMA component, which is where Steve comes in, which is another aspect of flood control. The FEMA is the Federal Emergency Management Administration, which ties into emergency management at the city level, and at the state level, it's MEMA, Massachusetts Emergency Management Association, agency. They're not associations, they're agencies. Those tie-ins are when there's an emergency with flooding, or in our case, flooding, Steve's role is to be that person that talks to these federal agencies to get the help to deal with the issues, to administer at the city level what FEMA and MEMA want the city to do. So there's that tie-in too. How does that play into this whole picture? Because there has to be a emergency management component in flood control. It's just people don't see it because they don't understand it, I guess. But that's how this is being set up at the federal and state level, and it has been for some time, and it's only increasing. And Steve will vouch for that. He sees the emails. I see the emails, and I've had the conversations live. So I mean, this is all coming down the pipeline, and whether people want to listen to us or not, it's beyond me. But it's going to come to the city at some point, where somebody at the federal or state level or both are going to come to the city and say, hey, the city needs to do these things because this is what we're requiring now. And if the city doesn't have that stuff in place, they're going to have to figure it out. And that's another whole complicated mess. Whereas right now the city's in a good position to deal with this and be ahead of the curve, where a lot of municipalities aren't. So anyway,
Well,
so that's where we're at. Go ahead, Steve.
Let me do a quick analysis here. Okay, so we're thinking cost effectiveness for the city, but let's get rid of a part-time commission. We need somebody full-time on the DPW. That means getting somebody with knowledge. So now we're going to hire somebody full-time, 75 to 100,000 a year, plus medical, 401, retirement. So it's going to cost the city 150,000 a year to basically get rid of the flood commission.
Well, it's something that I had asked for the Flood Control Commission itself. I mean,
You had asked for some help. You asked for a part-time secretary to help with the paperwork and the permit and everything else.
We asked for that, but then I asked for a full-time coordinator, because one of the things that the city doesn't have and should have is a full-time flood control person. And I submitted to the city council and prior mayor, a cost analysis of what that would be. I couldn't factor in, the insurance and all that, because that's union and other issues outside of my realm. But the average cost for a starting salary would be between $45,000 and $65,000 a year, and then whatever they want to negotiate with the unions contracts, that's above me. But that's the general ballpark nationally for someone in that role, and there are a lot of municipalities that have that specific role. It's not something I just pulled out of the air, and I did my homework on it. Now, one of the things that maybe I didn't explain it. So some of, if not all, and again, these are details I don't have answers to, because I don't know what the whole plan is. And I don't know if it's all been ironed out, but a lot of what the Flood Control Commission does as far as looking at its infrastructure would fall to the DPW board. So the DPW board would be doing some of the things that this commission does now. Whether it would do all of it or not, I don't think so. And that has to do with the floodplain permitting. That I don't know, but DPW, that's kind of out of the wheelhouse for the DPW board. But again, these are all things that are out there.
But DPW is overtaxed now. They're understaffed and everything else in their department. How can they take on another job? They're already running short. Right.
That I don't know. The mayor has a plan for it. The core of it is sound to me, but there are questions about the outside periphery of it. Is it what I would have recommended? No, I had a different tact on that, and I've made that clear that I had a different view on it. But I see the mayor's point. I mean, there is a valid point to what he's saying, because it is what other municipalities have done in this region. But I also see and again, I'm biased, but I see the other side where other municipalities outside of this region deal with it in a wholly different fashion, which is as we have a commission. I mean, there's municipalities, there's whole counties and states that have broken into flood control commissions, where they have regional and county and commissions that deal with all of the flood control for a whole area because they deal with it on a much larger scale than we do, which is actually probably a better system than what Massachusetts does. But that, again, is beyond us. But yeah, I mean, Westfield, and again, a lot of people may or may not realize Westfield is not like every other municipality in the state. If you look at a map of all the high-risk flood zones in the state, outside of the coastline, Westfield is a big red dot in the western half of the state, and there's only a couple other ones. There's not a lot of there's areas of flood risk, but Westfield has one of the largest hazard areas for any municipality. And it's very noticeable when you look at a FEMA map for flood risk. Westfield is a big red dot. And it's unlike the Connecticut River, the Merrimack River, the Chicopee River, and name a river east of here. It's very different from those rivers in that the Westfield watershed it's huge. It's the largest river system in the state, watershed system in the state, unless you want to count the Chicopee River with Quabbin, which is a whole different dynamic. But the Westfield River watershed is it's a rapid rise, rapid fall. And when there's flooding, the city doesn't have, unlike the Connecticut River municipalities, they have days, sometimes even a week to do what they need to do to anticipate a flood. We have hours. It happens fast. It goes away fast. And what it leaves behind is, well, whatever. You don't have a lot of time to think about it. You either got to do it or you don't. So, and that's where you come in, Steve, because if you don't have a good plan to deal with the situation or at least get people out of the way, then there's another whole problem.
That is another big problem.
Right. So anyway, these are all things, and really, I'm at the point where I've talked at it tonight, and I've talked about it in the past, to the point where I start to turn blue and people tune out because it's just a lot. And I know that. And my mental state with this, and I know I'm echoing Mark Goodness and Jack Leary, the mental state with dealing with flood control issues is, it's a lot. And we're kind of spinning ourselves stupid because, it's sometimes we're throwing spaghetti at a wall and hoping something sticks so we can get something done.
Yeah,
but
no
anyway.
lack of support. Yep, exactly.
Right. But anyway, Mayor McCabe has a plan, and the core of it sounds good to me. The core of it sounds good to me. It's the periphery that needs detail work, and details sometimes are the devil.
Well, a lot of times things look good on paper until reality hits.
Right. But anyway, I want to move on
because I think you covered it very well, Al.
Yeah, I'm talking ad nauseum here, so I'm gonna shut up.
Yeah, because we got a meeting over 2.5 hours. People are gonna shut us off.
They already did.
Oh no, not us.
So anyway, so that's the plan. Does anyone have anything they want to add to it else?
Well, if you don't get the support, you aren't get the job done. And the budget I've seen, and the repair, especially on Little River Levee. I mean, there are trees growing there on a levee that are 20 to 30 feet tall. They're wide. I mean, this thing was built with no trees on it back in the 50s. So you just look at it, it has been maintained, and it's atrocious.
Right.
But I'm going to end that because we got time here. We're losing our audience.
Mark Goodness, do you want to say anything?
Nothing, sure, except wish everybody good luck. Casey, you got a lot of Pepto-Bismol?
Hey, Mark, it's out of our hands, really. It's in the mayor and the city council's hands. Nothing we say,
I know it.
except for giving advice, is going to matter.
It's in the politicians' hands.
Right.
I say no more.
We've said enough because we have no control. We don't have an ounce control, and that's enough from me.
So, Casey here. Yeah, I appreciate all that you guys do, and however this moves forward, I definitely anticipate working with you guys. in whatever capacity it is. So this is nothing I've requested, just so you're aware. But you know, if this is the way things are going, this is the way I've got to go with it. So
Right.
but yeah, I certainly appreciate you know, all you guys and your professionalism and your dedication to the cause. So
Hey, we appreciate you, Casey, because you've been a great help.
No,
Great help.
you've been over
We'll
backwards
continue to have
for
these
us, Casey.
conversations. I'm sure we'll continue to have these conversations and keep working together in whatever facet that turns out to be.
As private citizens.
No, like I say,
Oh,
Casey.
dear. Anything else on
you
the
got my
agenda,
phone
Al?
number. If you need me, call me.
Right.
Likewise.
What else is on the agenda, Al?
Hold on one second. I want to say something to Casey. So, Casey, I mean, this isn't necessarily our last meeting, although it feels like it is. I just want to thank you again for everything over the years. You know, when you first came in, and you know, some of the hits you took for us in a roundabout way, and I'll leave it at that. I appreciate that. So, I appreciate what you've done for us and how you've helped us over the years. So, thank you.
Amen.
Not a problem.
All right, moving on to bills. So we had several bills which I signed and paid for, which one was for FM generator services. That was the general maintenance. I believe that was a couple $100, $200, I believe. And then we had a gas and electric bill for $165. Those were paid. As Mark Goodness was saying, in our last meeting, I had stated that we had topped off the fuel tank. That was paid for. So the generator fuel tank, emergency fuel tank, or I'm sorry, the emergency generator fuel tank was topped off. And I'm trying to think, there was one other bill I believe I saw, but I don't remember what it was. It was a while back. Also,
We need a motion to affirm that.
Nope, we don't need any motions because they're signed and paid for. The other things are, as we talked about kind of earlier. So March 4th, Friday, March 4th is the deadline for all encumbrances. I asked what's Mary's last name? Mary Taus. Mary, yes, Mary Taus. Thank you, Mary Taus. Yeah. I asked her to encumber funds to do purchase orders for the mowing and grooming, which was done, and for the rest of the year for Westfield Gas and Electric for Williams Riding Way's electric bill. So that has been taken care of. I asked if there was any other outstanding bills that she was aware of. She wasn't. And I also asked about the parcels that remain. There's 2 parcels, and that money is already encumbered, or should be encumbered, because that was signed for by the previous mayor and city council and approved by us quite some time ago. So it's the legal matter. So that money should all be tied up. Remaining funds, I don't have an exact number on that, only because there was a couple expenditures that kind of threw off what I thought the number was. And I have to ask Vicki Morrow specifically what we have left in our budget. So that's our bills. Moving on to, once my agenda comes back from its slumber here. My tablet fell asleep. Communications. So communications, I said one was March 4th is the cutoff. I also had a communication from Army Corps, which you probably all saw, which was about potential for ice jams. Jennifer Todd from Army Corps, the Levee Safety Program, sent out an email that she had received from Army Corps at the dams throughout this region, and the warning was for ice damming because of the fast melt that we had earlier in the week. And fortunately, those ice dams moved on, which we discussed earlier. It wasn't an issue for us. It was in some areas, but not for us. Other communications, I have Mass FM sent out their winter 22. I forgot what they call it. It's basically a
agenda.
Yeah, no, a quarterly publication. They sent that out, and the featured person in there was myself. They did an interview with me a couple months ago, and the funny enough, some of it is kind of ironic in what I wrote, what I said. So let me, I'll read through it quickly. The Winter 22 newsletter. So it's a quarterly newsletter from Mass FM. And bear with me one second while it opens. I'll read through the quick topics. Let's see, USGS 2018 nor'easters in coastal Mass. They have the USGS did a big study. That's one of the things. Test your flood insurance savvy is another one in the newsletter. Climigration and network. I'm not sure what that is. A natural nature-based flood management practices is another topic they have in here. U.S. Census community resilience estimates is another topic. Stormwater currency is another topic. United Nations University International Flood Mapping Tool, which is another topic. Australian articles on disaster and resilience. ASFPM, which is another national association, which at Mass FM is a part of. Green Guide for Community Resilience, and the Massachusetts Climate Resilience Design Standards Tool. These are all topics in there. There's actually some really good stuff in there regarding flood control and tools that are available to flood control entities to map out and do stuff. Mass FM Spotlight on Regional Members, Western Region. This is the first time that the Western Region's been highlighted. Written by David Azanera. I butchered his name, and I apologize. Interview with Al Jagir, December 16, 2021. I had the pleasure of interviewing Albert Jagir, a Mass FM member from the Western Region. Al is chair of the Westfield Flood Control Commission, has been involved with his part-time municipal role since 2012. I won't read through a whole bunch of that stuff, but I will read these things because some of it actually plays into what we were just talking about. What do you think the most important floodplain issue is for the Western Region? And my response was, for much of the Western Region, floodplain protection versus floodplain development is my overall largest concern. It's been a good couple of years since the flood of '55, so it is not easy for most people to imagine what a flood really looks like, the power water has, or the devastation left behind after the water recedes. The Westwood River watershed and others nearby are rapid rise, rapid fall watersheds due to their rate of elevation descent and narrow river valleys. This geography reduces the time residents and municipalities have to react to unexpected situations. Developmental pressures are also increasing on these formerly rural floodplains, so a better balanced regional approach by our state would be helpful. Next question. If you had heard today that there was a flood warning for Westfield, what would be your top concern be? Ensuring that our municipality was adequately preparing itself for the scope of the event and maintaining open communication with our neighboring municipalities, the National Weather Service, the Massachusetts Emergency Management Agency, and our flood control partners at the Massachusetts Department of Conservation and Recreation, Office of Dam Safety, the United States Army Corps of Engineers, the U.S. Department of Agriculture's Natural Resource Conservation Service, and the Springfield Water and Sewer Commission. Next question. Can you describe some of the benefits of having an appointed official-based flood protection organization such as the Westfield Flood Control Commission? Here's the irony. Most communities have phased out public flood control in Massachusetts, but there are several important benefits to having appointed flood control boards and members. 1, public awareness, involvement, and oversight increases when regular people are appointed to public bodies. 2, flood control issues are less likely to be pushed to the back of the list behind more visible to the public, like paved roads. 3, public boards and commissions offer diversified viewpoints that embody their community. And lastly, in your opinion, what is the city's greatest challenge with respects to flood control mitigation? Nice quacks. Adequate funding and modernization to flood control systems, policies, and overall flood program to meet the needs of the next 100 years versus still thinking in terms of 1950s standards when most of these flood control systems were designed. In addition to climate change issues are a concern, but Westville could be ahead of the game if we capitalize on available grants, programs, and accommodate modernized practices into the city's policies. So anyway, that's the long and short of it. I think that was kind of ironic in what came down barely a month later. So with all of that, I have nothing else. So I'm going to call for a motion to adjourn because this is.
We all get signed copy.
You want to sign an
Very good.
autograph copy?
Yeah, we need an autographed copy.
I'll give you an autograph copy.
Okay. I'll make a motion to adjourn. Are you ready?
Motion made.
Second.
Motion made by Jack
At
Davis, seconded by
8:45
Mark
to adjourn.
Loomis.
So moved.
All in favor?
Yep.
Aye.
Second.
Jack
Aye.
Leary.
Aye.
Jack Leary. Aye. Mark Goodness. Aye. Al Jageer. Aye. Thank you.
Aye.
Meeting adjourned. Thank you, Peter. This went a lot longer than I anticipated.